There are nights when the world outside falls silent, yet the mind inside stirs restlessly. The body may be still, but the heart carries weight, worries unspoken, regrets that return like echoes, and questions that hang in the dark. Where does peace truly reside? How do I find it in a world so loud, so full of striving? Perhaps you've asked this in the quiet hours when the lights are dim, but the thoughts won't dim with them. Maybe you've spent your days being strong for others, holding everything together, while quietly wondering who holds you. If that's where you are right now, know this: you are not alone. This ache for peace, for something deeper, has been felt across centuries by sages and seekers alike. Tonight, you're invited into an ancient path, not a destination, but a gentle returning. In the teachings of Zen Buddhism, there are stories told not to instruct, but to awaken. Stories of empty boats, wild strawberries, and monks in silence. Within them lie quiet keys, not to unlock some hidden door, but to help you sit more kindly within your own heart. Let me begin with one such story. There was once a man who loved to row a small boat on a peaceful river. Every evening, he'd glide through the water, bathed in golden light, wrapped in silence. But one day, another boat came crashing toward him. He shouted, he warned, he fumed until the boats collided, and then he saw the other boat was empty. No one inside, just drifting. And with that, his anger dissolved. Nothing had changed, except his understanding. This story may seem simple, but its depth is profound. So many of our inner storms arise not from what happens, but from the meaning we attach to it, from the stories our ego rushes to write. In that sense, most of life's collisions are with empty boats. And so, this journey begins. Over the next few chapters, you'll be gently guided through tales like this, each one a doorway into a different layer of the heart. Some will bring comfort, others challenge, but all are offered with one intention: to help you find stillness, not by escaping life, but by meeting it with wiser eyes. So now, breathe slowly, loosen your shoulders. Let this be a time not for learning more, but for remembering what your soul already knows: that peace is not far. It's right here, beneath the noise. And maybe, just maybe, through these stories, you'll feel it rise. Let us begin. There's a quiet river that flows through the heart of Zen, teaching a metaphorical one, gliding past stories, symbols, and centuries of seeking. Upon that river, there drifts a single wooden boat. It is empty, and yet, it may be the very thing that awakens us. Let's begin there. Once upon a still evening, a man took his boat out onto the water. As always, he sought solitude. The sun hung low, staining the sky with amber light. His oars moved gently, barely disturbing the surface. This was his ritual, his return to calm. But that day, something different happened. As he rowed, he noticed another boat coming toward him, slowly at first, then more directly. He called out, "Watch your path," but the boat kept drifting closer. Frustration rose. "Hey, move aside still." No response. Then, the crash, the wooden thud. His boat rocked. He stood up, ready to confront the careless person responsible, only to find the boat was empty. No one had guided it. No one had wronged him. It had simply been drifting with the current, and in that instant, all his anger melted. What changed? Not the collision. That still happened, not the situation, but his perception, his story about what was happening collapsed. In Zen, this is known as the space between what is and what we think about what is. That space is often small, so small we don't even notice it, but within it lies all our suffering. The man reacted not because his boat was hit, but because he believed someone was being rude, reckless, maybe even hostile. His anger was aimed not at the event, but at the meaning he attached to it. How many times have we done the same? We're cut off in traffic immediately. We assume that driver is disrespectful. Someone cancels a meeting. We think they don't value me. A text goes unanswered. We whisper to ourselves, I must not matter. But what if these were all empty boats? Zen Buddhism teaches that much of our reactivity stems from the ego's desperate need to defend its identity. The ego constructs a version of reality where we are the center and everyone else either affirms us or threatens us. If someone challenges that story, even unintentionally, the ego strikes back. It wants control, certainty, validation, and anything that disrupts that feels dangerous. In the story, the man didn't pause to question whether the boat had a captain. He filled in the blanks with blame. His ego needed an antagonist. Without one, his anger had no purpose. And without purpose, it evaporated. The moment he realized no one was there, he stopped being a victim. The genius of the empty boat story is this. It doesn't teach us how to avoid collisions. It teaches us how to meet them differently. Because in life, boats will crash into us. Words will wound. Plans will fail. People will disappoint. But we always have a choice. Do we treat it as intentional or accidental? More importantly, do we believe it's about us? Often, it's not. Most people are navigating their own storms. Their silence isn't rejection. Their harshness isn't hatred. Their mistakes aren't messages aimed at us. They're drifting, just like the boat sometimes without direction, without clarity, without awareness. When we can see that, we unlock a deeper peace. Zen doesn't ask us to suppress emotion. It invites us to observe it. When anger arises, notice it. Feel the heat in the body, the tightening jaw, the breath that turns shallow. These are not enemies. They're bells reminding us to wake up before the reaction spills out. Ask, is this really about me? What story am I telling myself right now? Could this be an empty boat? Just that pause, just that question creates space. And in that space, we regain our freedom. Elena worked hard on a collaborative project, long hours, quiet sacrifices. After the final presentation, the team leader thanked everyone except her. No name, no nod, nothing. Her face burned. Inside, a fire sparked. How could he ignore me? He must not respect my work. They always overlook me. That night, she drafted a sharp email, but something in her paused. Instead, she called a close friend who simply asked, "Is it possible he just forgot?" A silence. The next morning, the leader found her at her desk. Elena, I realized last night I forgot to thank you. I was nervous, overwhelmed, but your work carried this. Thank you. Empty boat. The fire vanished, and in its place, clarity. Our default setting in life is often take everything personally. Zen invites us to rewrite that. Let the default be curiosity instead of judgment, compassion instead of assumption, silence instead of defense. That doesn't mean we accept harm. It means we respond rather than react. We discern intention before assigning blame. We choose our peace over our pride, and in doing so, we become the calm within the storm, not the storm itself. 1. Catch the impulse. The next time you feel irritated, pause, say silently, empty boat. 2. Use your body as a signal. Tight chest, hot face. That's your cue. Breathe deep. Don't act yet. 3. Ask, what if this wasn't personal play with the possibility? Explore other explanations. 4. Wait before responding. A breath, an hour, even a night. The response will be wiser. 5. Reflect later. In the quiet of the evening, ask, where did I assume intention today? This practice isn't about excusing others. It's about reclaiming your center. Zen Master Dogen once wrote, "To study the self is to forget the self. And to forget the self is to be awakened by all things." The man on the river didn't just lose his temper. He lost his story. And in that loss, he found something deeper. That's the real gift of the empty boat. It's not about boats. It's about illusions. It's about how often we build entire narratives on shadows and then suffer inside them. What if we let them go? And tonight, as you lie in bed, think back. Was there a moment today that unsettled you? A comment, a look, a silence. Can you reimagine it now as an empty boat? Feel the tension soften. Let the river of your breath carry it away. Because the truth is, not every impact is an insult. Not every wave is an attack. And not every storm is meant for you. Sometimes, it's just an empty boat. Let it pass and return to stillness. You're walking through your day, and someone glances at you with disapproval. You feel it. A tightness in your chest. A flicker of heat. Something inside recoils, not from the look itself, but from what it might mean. Are they judging me? Did I do something wrong? Reactions rise. Defensiveness. Maybe anger. Maybe shame. But what truly gets hurt in these moments? Often, it's not our body or even our heart, but our identity. From early childhood, we begin to assemble a sense of self. Like bricks in a house, we gather experiences, labels, compliments, criticisms, and use them to build a structure called me. I am a good friend. I am smart. I am independent. I'm always the reliable one. These self-beliefs become our emotional armor. They provide comfort and coherence in a complex world. But there's a problem when any piece of that identity feels threatened. The whole house starts to shake. If I believe I'm generous, and someone calls me selfish, I react. If I think of myself as wise, and someone points out a mistake, I bristle. If I see myself as strong, but suddenly feel lost, I spiral into self-doubt. The stronger the identity, the more fiercely we defend it. In Buddhist thought, The ego is not inherently bad. It's a survival mechanism, a psychological construct that helps us function, compare, categorize. But when it goes unchecked, the ego becomes like a guard dog that barks at every perceived threat. It's always watching, always ready. Any hint of insult, any perceived slight, it jumps in. They disrespected me. They don't see my value. How dare they? The ego doesn't pause to ask, is this true? Or is this even about me? It reacts, instinctively, automatically, and often, unnecessarily. Part of why the ego reacts so strongly is because it believes in a fixed self, a version of me that must be maintained at all costs. It's afraid that if this version crumbles, we will disappear into nothingness. But the teachings of mindfulness reveal a different truth. The self is not fixed. It is fluid, changing, alive. We are not the same person from year to year or even day to day. Our values shift, our emotions evolve, our thoughts wander, and yet we cling to an image of ourselves like it's permanent. This clinging is the root of reactivity. When reality doesn't match the image we hold, friction arises, and friction fuels suffering. Let's be clear. Having a sense of identity is not wrong. It's natural. It helps us navigate the world, find our voice, relate to others. The danger lies in over-identifying with any particular role, trait, or label. I am the responsible one. I am the fixer. I am the one who never asks for help. These sound admirable, but what happens when life challenges them? What happens when you forget something important? When you can't fix the situation? When you need support? The ego reacts. Not because of the situation, but because of the threat to your identity. Samuel was the senior analyst everyone admired. Precise, sharp, always ahead of the curve. His identity was built on competence. One day, during a major presentation, he shared data that turned out to be outdated. His manager corrected him, gently, but something inside Samuel collapsed. He went silent, withdrawn. That night, he couldn't sleep. He replayed the scene over and over. It wasn't the correction that hurt. It was the shattering of the story. I don't make mistakes. I'm the one who always knows. But in the days that followed, something unexpected happened. He noticed how others on the team offered help. How one colleague said, "Thanks for being honest. It makes the rest of us feel okay, not being perfect." That comment opened something inside him. He realized, maybe I don't need to be the one who always gets it right. Maybe I can just be human. And in that, letting go, he found not weakness, but freedom. Just as the river never clings to the reflection on its surface, we are not meant to cling to any single image of ourselves. We are more than roles, titles, adjectives. The more we try to fix who we are in stone, the more brittle we become. But when we recognize our fluid nature like water, we become more resilient. We can flow around criticism. We can adapt to change. We can soften instead of shatter. Practicing non-identification. 1. Notice the I am statements. When you find yourself saying, "I am the kind one. I'm always in control." Pause. Ask, what happens if that's not true today? 2. Feel before you defend. When you feel hurt, ask, what identity is being threatened? Is it your intelligence, your competence, your kindness? 3. Name the reaction. Simply saying, ah, ego-defending identity can bring immediate space. 4. Return to the body. Identity lives in the mind. Peace lives in the breath. Come back. Inhale. Exhale. 5. Embrace impermanence. Say to yourself, I am many things. Today, I'm learning. This invites grace, humility, and growth. One of the most healing truths we can accept is this: I am not my reaction. Yes, anger may rise, shame may flare, but those are experiences, not definitions. The ego says, if I'm wrong, I'm worthless. Mindfulness says, if I'm wrong, I'm growing. The ego says, they don't see me. Presence says, let me see myself clearly. Every time we choose awareness over identity, we weaken the chains of reactivity. You are not the voice in your head defending your name. You are not the story you tell to feel safe. You are not the persona you wear in the world. You are something quieter, something deeper, something unshakable. And when you rest there, reactions fade like smoke. What remains is peace. There is a moment, often small, often quiet, when something inside us stirs. We're about to say something sharp, to raise our voice, to walk away in frustration. But then, a breath slips in. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself, but it changes everything. Suddenly, we see we're not just in the moment, we're aware of the moment. That shift, so subtle, is the doorway to something ancient and transformative: mindfulness. Mindfulness, in its truest form, is not about sitting still or calming down. It's not a technique to be perfected or a lifestyle to be curated. It is the humble art of noticing, of being present with what is, exactly as it is, without needing to push it away or pull it closer. And in that presence, we find not a new version of ourselves, but a return to the one we forgot. Most people think freedom comes when life stops hurting, when everyone is kind, when work is easy, when the mind goes quiet. But the freedom mindfulness offers is different. It's not freedom from life. It's freedom in life. The ability to stay awake and rooted, even as the winds of joy or sorrow pass through. Imagine you're walking through your day and someone criticizes you. Instinct tightens the chest, heats the face, sharpens the tongue. But then, awareness arrives. You notice the reaction before it takes over. You feel it, see it, name it. And just like that, you're no longer inside the reaction, you're holding it in your hand. That's the gift mindfulness gives. Not the removal of difficulty, but the return of choice. There's an old story in the Zen tradition about a student who asks his master, "What is enlightenment?" The master responds by letting a teacup fall to the floor. Where it shatters, the student is startled. The master smiles and says, "When you no longer flinch at the sound of breaking, you will understand." He was not speaking about cups alone. He was speaking of all the things that break expectations, routines, identities, dreams. Liberation is not about avoiding the shattering. It's about resting so deeply in presence that even the sound of breaking becomes sacred. The beauty of mindfulness is that it needs no altar. You don't need candles or mantras or silence. You just need attention. When brushing your teeth, feel the vibration of the brush. When stepping outside, listen for the wind. when drinking water, follow it down your throat. These are not chores. They are thresholds, each one a quiet invitation to return. With time, mindfulness reshapes the way we meet ourselves. We begin to notice the stories we tell, the voice that says, "You're not enough," the habit of rushing to fill silences, the tension that masks vulnerability. But instead of fighting these patterns, we learn to greet them. "Ah," we whisper inwardly, "this is the fear again." And we sit with it. Not to fix it, but to understand it. Awareness, offered gently and without judgment, becomes the balm. It is easy to believe that awakening means transcending pain, but the deeper truth is this: even suffering, when held with mindfulness, becomes a teacher. Pain says, "Something is here to notice." Suffering says, "I'm resisting what is." Mindfulness sits between the two, offering neither escape nor surrender, just clarity. And in that clarity, pain softens, suffering unwinds. The heart, no longer clenched, begins to breathe again. Chaos doesn't end. The phone still rings. The child still cries. The memory still hurts. But mindfulness trains us to stand steady in the center of the storm. Not because we've mastered stillness, but because we've stopped running. We've turned to face the weather and discovered that we are larger than the sky. You don't need to retreat to a mountain to taste this freedom. It lives in the space between two breaths. It speaks in the quiet between words. You could try it right now. Pause. Feel the chair beneath you. Feel the inhale, the exhale, the life moving quietly through you. This is it. This is the doorway. You are already standing at it. A woman once told her teacher, "I want to be free." The teacher replied, "Then stop grasping." She looked puzzled. He added, "Grasping at peace, grasping at success, grasping at being seen. Freedom isn't earned, it's uncovered." And in that moment, she realized the one who was searching was the one who needed to rest. This is the heart of awakening, not becoming someone better, but becoming no one, no fixed identity, no image to protect, just presence, just breath, just the raw, wild, beautiful truth of now. And from that space, life doesn't feel like something to survive. It feels like something to witness, to love, to dance with. In the end, mindfulness is not about control. It's about intimacy with your thoughts, your wounds, your joy, your fear. It's about being so fully here that nothing feels like too much or too little. Everything becomes enough because you are enough. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, remember, you don't need to fix the moment. You just need to see it, name it, breathe into it, and then respond from love, from clarity, from freedom. You don't have to go far to awaken. Just arrive here, now. This is liberation. There are moments in the day when something goes wrong, a comment that feels sharp, a promise forgotten, a small betrayal, an unexpected disappointment. The heart tightens, the breath becomes shallow. We feel wronged, unseen, hurt, and without thinking, the mind begins to craft a story. They don't respect me. They should have known. Why is this happening to me again? Like a spark to dry grass, the story grows into fire. But what if we could see the fire coming before it consumes us? That is where meditation enters, not as an escape, but as a mirror polished through daily practice, showing us the real source of our suffering is not always the event itself, but our identification with it. It shows us the empty boat, again and again, until we no longer see enemies, but only the wind, the water, and sometimes no one steering. When we sit in meditation, we are not performing a spiritual task. We are remembering something natural. We close our eyes, straighten the spine, and begin to breathe, not to find peace, but to return to it. The thoughts rise judgments, memories, plans, some soft, some charged. But instead of chasing them or pushing them away, we sit as a mountain, watching, breathing, letting them pass like clouds. In time, we begin to recognize the pattern. Most thoughts are about self. Most reactions are rooted in identity. I am right. I am hurt. I deserve more. This is not a fault. It's simply how the mind defends itself. But in meditation, we gain the space to question. Is this thought true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And perhaps most importantly, what if this is just an empty boat? We begin to apply that same awareness off the cushion at work, when a colleague interrupts, at home, when a loved one forgets, online, when a stranger provokes. Each moment becomes an invitation to pause, to breathe, and to ask what part of me is reacting over time. Meditation softens the borders of the ego. The walls we built to protect ourselves begin to dissolve. We find less need to be right, to be seen, to control. We learn that we can simply be, and in that being, there is enormous strength, not the strength of defense, but the strength of presence. There's a small story shared among Zen practitioners about a student who complained, "Every time I meditate, I get distracted, I get angry, I fall asleep, I think about dinner, it's useless." The teacher smiled and said, "Good. Now, you are finally seeing what has always been there." Meditation is not about performance. It is about intimacy with our own mind. And through that intimacy, we start to see most of our days are filled with empty boats, harmless events into which we pour meaning. We build whole narratives around glances, emails, silences, but the boat is empty. Our suffering arises not from impact, but from the meaning we give it. With practice, meditation becomes less about technique and more about attitude. We bring a meditative presence into conversations, into traffic, into waiting lines. When something irritates us, we ask, "Is this worth disturbing my peace?" This question alone is a form of wisdom, a small inner bell that rings before the reaction. And even when we do react because we are human, it rings again after. What story did I just create? Can I let it go now? There's no perfection in this path, but there is transformation. One morning, a meditator was walking down the street when someone bumped into him hard. Without apology, his first instinct flared. How rude, but in the next breath, he remembered his practice. He softened, turned to look. The person was blind, and suddenly, everything shifted. Compassion replaced anger. The story collapsed. There was only presence. Meditation trains us for these moments not to avoid them, but to meet them with openness. We learn to sit, not only on the cushion, but in discomfort, in uncertainty, in silence. We learn to trust that our center cannot be shaken by a wave, because we are the ocean, not the surface. So let each sit be a return. Let each breath remind you this moment is enough. You are enough. And most boats are empty. Breathe in. Breathe out. Come back. There's a strange irony to modern life. We live in an era more connected than ever. One message, one click, and we can reach across continents, timelines, and cultures. And yet, we've never felt more misunderstood, more reactive, more vulnerable to the unseen tides of emotional friction. The boats are still crashing, but now they arrive through screens, emails, meetings, and late-night silence. In the past, the empty boat may have floated on a river. Today, it glides through a comment thread on Facebook, an unread message left unseen, a sudden change in tone in a Zoom meeting. The collisions haven't stopped. They've simply changed form. But so has the opportunity for awakening. Let's begin with the realm of social media. It was once a space for connection, for reunion, for sharing. But gradually, it became an arena of comparison, performance, and subtle hostility. We scroll past polished images, curated lives, opinions shared not with curiosity, but with assertion. And when someone challenges what we post, or doesn't respond to our story, or seems to thrive more than we do, something inside stirs. Why didn't they like it? Do they still care about me? Am I falling behind the ego? Even online, clings to a story. It builds an identity through how we're perceived, the follower count, the likes, the speed of replies. Every delay can feel like distance, every disagreement, a rejection. And yet, what if these are just empty boats? A friend doesn't reply to a heartfelt message. Hours pass, then a day. The mind fills in the silence. She's ignoring me. I must have said too much. But later, we learn her father was in the hospital. Her heart was somewhere else entirely. The collision had no captain. In the working world, the same dynamic unfolds. A boss criticizes your idea in a meeting. You burn inside, feeling unseen. A colleague takes credit for a shared success. You feel erased. A client ghosted you. You feel dismissed. But when we sit with these experiences, when we breathe through the sting, we often uncover something deeper. The wound is not just about the moment, it's about what it touched in us. The boss's words weren't just feedback. They brushed up against an old fear. Am I good enough? The silence from the client wasn't just absence, it echoed an old rejection. Meditation teaches us to sit with the discomfort long enough to name it and to question it. Is this true? Or is this the ego building a castle of meaning on sand? One woman, a senior consultant, shared how after years of mindfulness practice, she no longer reads difficult emails immediately. She waits, she breathes, she lets the heat pass. Most of the time, she said, by the time I open it, the emotion has shifted. I read it as it is, not as my fear interpreted it. Our relationships, too, are full of empty boats, especially the ones closest to us. A partner forgets an anniversary. A child rolls their eyes. A friend cancels at the last minute. We often assume intention. They don't care. They're taking me for granted. They always do this. But if we pause, if we soften, we might see another layer. Maybe the partner was overwhelmed. Maybe the child was tired. Maybe the friend was hurting in silence. Presence in relationships doesn't mean being passive. It means responding from awareness, not assumption. One breath, one pause, one small space between stimulus and reaction, that's all it takes to stop the spiral. And in that pause, a new path opens: communication instead of accusation, curiosity instead of certainty, softness instead of defense. Mindfulness applied to relationships asks a radical question. What if the other person is not wrong, but simply hurting? 2. In practical terms, this might look like saying, "I noticed you didn't respond. Are you okay?" instead of, "Why are you ignoring me?" Or when you said that, "It felt painful to me," instead of, "You're always so inconsiderate." It's not about being kind to avoid conflict. It's about staying rooted in your clarity so that conflict doesn't pull you out of yourself. In moments of overwhelm, we can also use the body as a refuge. At work, pause between meetings. Feel the chair under your spine. Feel the breath. In conversation, drop into your feet. Let them anchor you. On social media, notice your heart before you comment. Ask, is this useful? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And perhaps the most profound modern application, relearn the art of not responding. You don't need to reply to every message instantly. You don't need to fix every misunderstanding. You don't need to react to every projection. Silence can be an act of wisdom. Delay can be compassion for yourself and for others. Another beautiful practice is to keep a reaction journal. At the end of each day, note one moment where you felt reactive. Write what happened, how you felt, and what story you told yourself. Then ask, could that have been an empty boat? The more we do this, the more we peel away layers. We begin to see that beneath every sharp reaction is often a vulnerable need, a need to be seen, loved, understood, safe. And when we see that need clearly, we stop projecting it onto others. We begin to hold it ourselves with tenderness. Modern life may be fast, but mindfulness slows the impact. It doesn't remove the boat, but it teaches us to step out of its path or let it pass through us without damage. You are not your inbox. You are not your notifications. You are not your reflection in someone else's story. You are the space between the thought and the reaction. You are the awareness watching the storm. You are the one who can choose, again and again, to stay soft, even when others aren't, even when the world isn't. That's the modern miracle of mindfulness, not that it changes life, but that it changes you. You don't need to quit social media. You need to log in with awareness. You don't need to quit your job. You need to enter meetings with presence. You don't need perfect relationships. You need a heart that listens more than it fears. Because in this very world, in the notifications, the meetings, the missed calls, the imperfect love, you can find your way home. Not by controlling it, but by noticing it, by breathing through it, and by remembering most boats are empty. Let them pass and return to stillness. There are times when the storm outside seems too quiet, yet the turmoil within still spins. The event has passed. The words have been said. The silence has settled. But the mind continues to write. It writes versions of what could have been. It writes motives behind what was said. It writes stories of what we mean to others, of how we were wronged. of how we must respond. And often, it writes with ink dipped in fear, insecurity, or ego. What we fail to notice is this: the story we are creating now may be the source of our suffering far more than the moment that triggered it. In the quiet space after a disagreement, have you ever caught yourself rehearsing what you'll say next time, rewriting the past with different endings, repeating a judgment over and over until it feels like truth? That is the mind creating a story. And so the question arises, what story am I adding right now? It's a question that interrupts the pattern, not with judgment, but with awareness. A gentle inquiry, a lantern in the fog in Buddhist psychology. This pattern of narrative making is known as papanka mental proliferation. A single thought arises, and rather than let it pass, the mind multiplies it. A glance becomes a rejection. A silence becomes an accusation. A minor setback becomes a personal failure. The ego, ever hungry for control and identity, seizes the raw material of experience and molds it into meaning. But not all meaning is true. Not all stories need to be told. The story is not the pain itself. It's the layer we add on top. A friend forgets to call. That's a fact. The mind says, they don't care. I always give more. People abandon me. These are the stories. And they hurt far more than the missed call. To notice that you're writing a story is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the moment the author realizes the pen can be put down. There's a story of a monk who, during his meditation, was often disturbed by noise from a neighbor. One day, he finally went over and complained. The neighbor apologized, saying they had just moved in and were adjusting. That night, the monk sat to meditate again, and once more, the noise returned. But this time, something shifted. He asked himself, what story am I about to tell? That they are disrespectful? That they're attacking my peace? Or can I just hear the sound and let it pass? And so, he did. The sound became only sound. The suffering ceased, not because the world changed, but because the story stopped. This practice is not about erasing emotion. It's not about being indifferent or suppressing your truth. It's about seeing clearly, recognizing the space between what happened and what we add. It's about asking, is this pain fresh, or is it tangled with an old wound? Is this story helping me understand, or only helping me justify my reaction? You might be surprised to discover how many stories you tell yourself in a single day. Stories about your worth, about other people's intentions, about the future, and often, these narratives repeat old themes: rejection, not enoughness, betrayal, unworthiness. It's not that the world keeps hurting us, it's that we carry old scripts into new scenes. So pause. Breathe. Ask, am I responding to this moment, or to the story I'm writing about it? One helpful practice is to take a few minutes each evening and write down a strong emotional reaction you had during the day. Then, beneath it, write what happened, only the facts. Finally, write the story you created. Often, just seeing the separation between event and narrative is enough to loosen the grip. For example, event. My friend didn't respond to my message for 3 days. My story. She's ignoring me. She doesn't value me. I always care more than others. New awareness. I felt hurt by the delay, and I added a story about being unloved. Maybe she was busy or struggling. I can ask gently rather than assume. This isn't about denying our feelings. It's about honoring them by not adding unnecessary suffering on top. There is a phrase in meditation circles: drop the story, feel the feeling. It means coming home to the body, to the breath, to what is here, not what the mind insists must be explained, justified, or avenged. Sometimes, sitting quietly and asking this one question: what story am I adding is enough to unravel a knot that might have lived in us for years. You may notice, too, how much lighter you feel when the story dissolves. The tightness in your chest loosens. The breath returns. You feel less like a victim and more like a witness. And in witnessing, you reclaim your power. Because when you stop adding stories, something else has room to emerge: compassion for others, for yourself, for the beautiful mess of life. The next time someone speaks harshly, ask, can I see the pain beneath their words when you make a mistake? Ask, can I hold this without adding shame when you feel alone? Ask, is the loneliness real? Or am I telling myself I'm unloved? You'll find that most of the time, the pain is softer than the story. And that's when healing begins, not by changing what happened, but by changing how tightly we hold the story of it. Ask softly. Ask often. What story am I adding now? Then breathe and return to what's real. The real prison is rarely made of walls. It's often built from beliefs quiet, unquestioned ideas we carry about who we are, what we deserve, and what life owes us. These thoughts don't shout. They whisper. They shape our vision subtly until we no longer see life as it is, but only through the haze of what we fear, expect, or regret. The Buddha did not promise a life without pain. He simply pointed to a path that ends the added suffering, the suffering we create on top of the pain. It begins not with changing the world, but with recognizing the weight we carry unknowingly, the inner noise, the ego's armor, the looping stories that keep us trapped in why me. The first step on this path is honesty, not moral perfection, but intimate truthfulness with ourselves. It's the quiet moment when we admit, I've been holding on to this too tightly. I've been hurting myself through the stories I repeat. I've mistaken my reaction for reality. Sometimes, it's a broken relationship that brings us to this threshold, or a health scare, or burnout. Life's difficulties don't always come to destroy, they often come to reveal. And when the surface cracks, we see I cannot keep going the same way. There was a man named Lee, a successful architect in his mid-40s. He had a sharp mind, a well-structured life, and a deep weariness he couldn't explain. Despite external success, he often felt anxious, unsatisfied, and restless. He began a meditation course out of curiosity, not desperation. But within the first week, something cracked. He noticed how, every time someone disagreed with him at work, a rush of defensiveness arose, not because the feedback was cruel, but because it touched an old wound. I must always be right to be respected. The realization was quiet, but seismic. For years, he had carried a self-image so fragile it couldn't tolerate disagreement. The exhaustion didn't come from his work. It came from the armor he wore in every conversation. As Lee deepened his practice, he began to see how much of his emotional pain was constructed layered on by past interpretations, future anxieties, imagined rejections. He had not been living in the world as it was, but in a world shaped by fear and control. Slowly, he began to lay down the armor, one breath at a time, one reaction at a time. That's how the journey unfolds, not in grand gestures, but in small inner shifts. It begins when we choose to notice instead of react, to breathe instead of brace, to meet discomfort with curiosity instead of blame. There's a moment in every meditator's journey when they see their mind clearly for the first time. It can be humbling. The self-righteousness, the assumptions, the habits of judgment. But if we meet this moment with gentleness, something beautiful happens. We no longer feel ashamed. We feel free. Because to see clearly is to stop being fooled. It's to realize I do not need to carry this anymore. In this process, compassion becomes essential, not as a virtue, but as medicine. We learn to hold our inner wounds not with shame, but with care, to speak to ourselves as we would to a friend, to say, yes, you've been reactive, but now you see, and seeing is the start of healing. This journey also teaches us the power of space between thought and response, between story and truth, between pain and peace. And we realize we are not our thoughts. We are the sky, not the weather. And no matter how turbulent the moment, the sky remains untouched. The liberation from self-made suffering isn't a destination. It's a way of walking. Some days, you'll forget. You'll get pulled into anger, fear, comparison. But even then, the path is still under your feet. The next breath is always a return. Sometimes, we think spiritual growth means we become unshakable, but real growth means we shake, we stumble, and we return faster, with more softness, more clarity, less blame. Lee once described a turning point after a tense meeting. He felt the familiar storm rising, but instead of lashing out or retreating inward, he simply breathed. He watched the anger swell and pass. No explosion, no collapse, just awareness. Later, he smiled and said, for the first time, I felt free not because the situation was easy, but because I wasn't caught in it. That's the freedom we seek, not immunity from life, but intimacy with it. To live fully present, undefended, awake. And so the path continues not upward, but inward, not through perfection, but through presence. Every moment is a chance to see more clearly. Every breath, an invitation to soften. Every reaction, a teacher. And the greatest freedom of all is this: you can always choose again. The journey through suffering often begins not with the world outside, but with the storms we unknowingly stir within. We've walked together through the story of the empty boat, through moments of misunderstanding, assumptions, projections, and inner narratives that color the world in shades of our past. We've explored how the ego reacts, how mindfulness reclaims the present, and how silence, space, and inquiry create openings where once there was only tension. Again and again, we've seen a gentle truth emerge. Much of our suffering is self-woven, not because we are flawed, but because we are human, tender, and trying to protect ourselves in ways we no longer need to. You've now glimpsed what it means to pause before reacting, to question the urgency of emotion, to hold discomfort not as a threat, but as a messenger. These shifts, though subtle, carry immense power. They are the roots of inner freedom. But this freedom is not a static place. It is a practice, a way of being that meets each moment with openness. It grows not through effort alone, but through surrender. And in surrender, we discover we've never needed to be anyone other than who we are, right here. From the sharp edges of social tension to the quiet pull of self-criticism, we've explored how awareness becomes the balm. And as we continue walking this path, a deeper question begins to rise, not just how to stop suffering, but how to truly live. What does it mean to live wholly, to savor each breath, to see beauty even as life unfolds unpredictably? This leads us to the next chapter of our journey, one rooted in a single, powerful metaphor, the story of the monk and the wild strawberry. It is a tale not of avoiding danger, but of tasting life in the very midst of it, of choosing presence over fear, fruit over fleeing. We've cleared the ground, now we've seen the mind's habits, the nature of reaction, the roots of false identity. Now we step into the sunlight of the present moment. What awaits is not just less suffering, but more life. Let's walk forward into now. There is an old Zen story that, like a quiet bell, rings long after it's been heard. A man is walking through a forest when suddenly a fierce tiger begins to chase him. He runs, his heart pounding, breath shallow, fear surging through every step. The tiger closes in, desperate. The man sees a vine hanging over the edge of a cliff. He grabs it and swings himself over the side, hanging in midair. Below him waits another tiger, jaws open, eyes locked upward. Above him, the first tiger snarls at the edge, and there he is, suspended between two certainties of death. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he sees something, a single wild strawberry growing from the cliffside, red and ripe and glistening in the sunlight. He reaches with one hand, plucks the strawberry, and places it in his mouth. And he says, "Delicious." That's it. That's the story. No one saves him. No miracle appears. He is still caught between two ends, but he tastes the strawberry, and in that simple act lies a profound teaching. The two tigers are not merely animals, they are metaphors. One represents the past, the pain, regret, loss, mistakes. The other, the future, the unknown, the fear, the looming what-ifs. And we, like the man on the vine, spend much of our lives suspended between the two, thinking about what went wrong, worrying about what might go wrong. We rarely notice the strawberry, but the strawberry is always there. It is the present moment, this breath, this sound, this sensation of wind on skin, this warm sip of tea, this one chance to live now, before anything else comes. Most of us live as though life is something to get through, to fix, to figure out. We wait for a future when things will finally be okay. We carry stories of the past like burdens in a backpack. But the truth is, life doesn't need to be figured out. It needs to be felt. In the story, the man doesn't escape. He doesn't deny his fear. He doesn't conquer the tigers, but he does something far more radical. He chooses presence. He chooses to taste the moment, even if it's his last. That strawberry becomes sacred, not because it saves him, but because he notices it. That's what mindfulness invites us to do. To live not in the idea of life, not in the story of life, but in the raw, breathing, fleeting texture of it. To notice the strawberry on our own cliffside, the laughter of a child, the softness of sunlight on a wall, the quiet of an early morning. Often, we ask the wrong questions. How do I escape my pain? How do I protect myself from the future? But perhaps the more transformative question is what beauty is here, even now. Because beauty doesn't wait for us to be ready. It doesn't ask if we're healed. It simply is, waiting to be tasted. And we miss it not because it's not there, but because we're looking somewhere else. We're in the past, or the future, or the stories we create about both. The strawberry reminds us the only place we ever live is now. Even in crisis, even in chaos, especially in chaos, there's something wild and tender about choosing joy in the middle of fear. It's not denial, it's devotion. It says, I know what's waiting above and below, but right here, I am alive, and I will taste what life offers me. This doesn't mean we stop planning, or grieving, or preparing, but it means we stop postponing our presence. Because the truth is, we never escape the tigers. Life is uncertain. Pain comes. Endings arrive. But we can stop running. We can stop missing the moments between. That's the gift of the story. Not a lesson in escape, but an invitation to arrive. So, where is your strawberry? Right now? Is it the warmth of your breath as you exhale? Is it the steady rhythm of your heartbeat? Is it a small memory that still makes you smile? You don't need to fix your life before you can be present. You don't need to solve every problem before you feel peace. You only need to pause, to notice, to taste, even if you're tired, even if you're scared, even if nothing makes sense, especially then. The monk in the story doesn't pretend the tigers aren't there. He simply chooses not to let them take everything from him. Not this breath, not this berry, not this moment. And so can we. So when you feel overwhelmed by deadlines, by heartbreak, by the chaos of the world, come back to the strawberry. Feel your feet on the ground. Feel your breath in your body. Feel what is real, right now. It may not change the world, but it will change how the world touches you. And that's enough. It begins so subtly. We barely notice. A notification, a sudden worry, a voice in our mind saying, just check one more thing. And before we realize it, we've left the moment we were in. Not physically. Perhaps we are still sitting, standing, breathing, but inwardly, we are gone. The present has vanished beneath the weight of anticipation, concern, and stimulation. Why is it so hard to stay here, in this moment, even when we long for peace? The answer is ancient. It lies not in our habits alone, but in the wiring of our minds. Specifically, in the survival instinct we inherited from ancestors who had to be alert to danger every moment. For them, being present could be a risk. It was the future that held potential threats, the rustle in the bushes, the shifting shadow, the predator unseen. Constant vigilance meant life or death. And although the world has changed, the instinct remains. The brain still scans for danger, still assumes the worst, still pulls us into the what if. Only now, the tiger is not behind the tree. It's in the email inbox, in the pending bill, in the uncertain tone of someone we love. Our nervous system responds not to reality, but to imagined threats. And so, we live not in the present, but in preparation for the next blow. This instinct is not wrong. It's how we survived, but left unchecked. It becomes the very thing that robs us of life. A woman sits at dinner with her partner. The food is warm, the room quiet, but her mind is elsewhere, replaying an earlier argument, worrying about tomorrow's meeting, wondering if she's still enough. Her partner speaks, but she doesn't hear. She's not here. She's in the forest of fear. We've all been there. Sometimes, we mistake this state for productivity. We call it multitasking, being responsible, staying ahead. But truly, it is distraction rooted in anxiety. It's not presence, it's preoccupation, and the cost is high. We miss the laughter of our children, the softness of twilight, the taste of food prepared with care. We miss our own lives, not because we are too busy, but because we are too afraid to stop watching for danger. There's a moment in meditation when the mind begins to slow, and a strange thing happens. The body relaxes, the heart rate steadies, and yet there's discomfort, a restlessness, as if the silence is too loud. That's the survival instinct waking up. It whispers, "Don't relax. You might miss something. Something bad could happen." But what if nothing bad is happening right now? What if the very thing we're avoiding, this silence, this stillness, is the doorway to peace? To answer that, we must understand presence is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to stay with ourselves. Even when fear arises, the instinct to run from emotion, from discomfort, from uncertainty is primal. But each time we pause and stay, we retrain the nervous system. We teach it. This moment is safe. You can rest here. Gradually, the space between fear and reaction widens. The compulsion to check, to plan, to worry, softens. We begin to trust the now. In this trust, we rediscover joy, not the kind of joy that shouts, but the quiet one that hums in the background in the warmth of sunlight, in the rhythm of breath, in the simplicity of being. But this joy is fragile when we're ruled by distraction. Our culture rewards urgency. We are praised for being busy, for knowing what's next, for never pausing. And yet, underneath it all, many of us are exhausted not from work, but from constant mental motion, from always needing to be somewhere other than here. There's a story of a teacher who told his students, "Every time you drink tea, just drink tea." One student asked, "But what if I have thoughts?" The teacher smiled and replied, "Then drink tea with your thoughts, but don't drink the thoughts instead of the tea." How often do we drink the thoughts instead of the tea? This isn't just a metaphor. It's a way of life. When we eat, can we truly taste when we listen? Can we truly hear when we sit? Can we truly be? The answer depends on our willingness to notice the pull of distraction and gently return. This returning is the essence of mindfulness. It's not about stopping the mind. It's about noticing where it goes and choosing to come home again and again. Even if you've drifted 100 times today, you can return now. There's a simple practice to help choose one daily activity: washing your hands, brushing your teeth, walking from one room to another. Each time you do it, treat it as a bell of awareness, not a task, but a gateway. Feel the sensation, notice the thoughts, and gently say, "I am here." That's enough. In time, the body remembers, the mind learns. The present stops feeling so foreign. It becomes familiar again, like an old friend you'd forgotten you missed. And slowly, life begins to soften. Not because it changes, but because you are no longer resisting it. The survival instinct may never disappear, but it doesn't need to control us. It can become part of the orchestra, not the conductor, and the music of the present can rise. You don't need to wait for a perfect moment to be present. This one will do. You don't need to escape your instincts. You only need to notice them and choose, gently, to stay. There is a hidden ache beneath the surface of modern life. You feel it in the quiet moments just before sleep, just after waking, in the pause between messages, in the sudden silence when a song ends. It is a kind of tremor, a tension, the background hum of unease that whispers, "You're not doing enough. Something might go wrong. Hurry, prepare, watch out." This is anxiety, not always loud or dramatic, but persistent, like a mist that clouds the present, and it rarely comes from the moment itself. More often, it rises from our minds wandering far from now into the future, into imagined outcomes, into worry and doubt. And this is where meditation becomes not a technique, but a sanctuary. Meditation does not promise to eliminate anxiety, but it offers something deeper, the ability to relate to it differently, to meet it, hold it, and, eventually, loosen its grip. The first thing you learn in meditation is how often your mind leaves the present. You sit with the intention to follow your breath, and within seconds, you are in a conversation that never happened, a fear about tomorrow, or a judgment about yourself. And here's the miracle that noticing, that simple moment of, I'm gone again, is the practice. It is the muscle being trained not in perfect stillness, but in gentle returning. Every return is a small act of liberation. One teacher described it beautifully. Each time you come back to the breath, you are reminding yourself, this moment is enough. This breath is safe. This body is here. It seems almost too simple. Can something as quiet as breath, as ordinary as sitting still, truly soften anxiety? But that's the gift. The simplicity is the medicine. Anxiety thrives on complexity, on spinning, planning, anticipating. It wants movement, certainty, control. Meditation invites stillness, presence, surrender. And in this contrast, a shift begins. Imagine a lake, agitated by wind. The surface ripples wildly, and nothing is clear. But let the wind die down, and slowly, the water stills. Reflections return. Depths become visible. In meditation, we are letting the wind of thought and emotion slow, not to stop life, but to see it more clearly. And what we begin to see is this: most of our anxiety is not about what is, but about what might be. What if they don't like me? What if I fail? What if something bad happens? These thoughts are not based in now. They are shadows of the future. And yet, the body responds as if they are real. The heart races, the muscles tighten, the breath shortens. But when we sit and return over and over to the body, to the breath, to this very moment, we send a new signal. We are safe. We are not in danger. We are here. This signal rewires the nervous system. It teaches the body to trust presence. It undoes years of living on alert. One woman, struggling with chronic anxiety, described how at first, Meditation made it worse. I didn't want to feel my body, she said. It felt like a battlefield. But over time, she learned to stay with it, not to fix it, not to fight it, but to simply sit beside it. Eventually, she said, I realized the anxiety wasn't attacking me. It was asking to be seen. That's one of the most powerful gifts of meditation. It allows what has been exiled to return home. The anxious mind often believes it needs to solve everything before it can rest. Meditation teaches the opposite, that rest is the ground from which wisdom arises. You don't need all the answers to breathe deeply. You don't need to fix the future to feel peace now. You only need to be willing to feel this moment fully, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's messy, even if your thoughts scream otherwise, because this moment is all there is. Anxiety tells you to escape it. Meditation invites you to stay, and in staying, you begin to see that the moment is not the enemy, it is the doorway. Let's make this more practical. When anxiety arises, rather than trying to analyze it or escape it, pause. Feel your feet. Feel your breath. Name what is present. I feel tension in my chest. I notice rapid thoughts. There is a sense of fear. Naming is powerful. It creates space between you and the sensation. It allows you to relate rather than react. Then, ask gently, what is this anxiety trying to protect? What story is it telling? You might hear answers like, it's trying to protect my success. It's trying to keep me from being abandoned. It wants me to be good enough. And suddenly, the anxiety is no longer a monster. It is a child trying to keep you safe. Hold it, thank it, and remind it. We are here now. We don't need to run. Over time, meditation helps you recognize the gap between stimulus and response. That split second space where choice lives. And from that space, you can choose presence again and again. You may not always succeed. That's okay. The power of meditation is not in never being anxious. It's in no longer being owned by anxiety. It's in knowing that you can return. No matter how far you've wandered, no matter how loud the fear, you can sit, you can breathe, you can come home. This is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you are when you're not afraid, when you're not distracted, when you're not running. You are peace. You are awareness. You are the stillness beneath the storm. So let the storm come, if it must. You now know the way back. You now know the way home. In the stillness of a meditation hall, the world seems far away. No deadlines, no crying children, no unread emails or board meetings. Yet the real test of mindfulness is not in the silence of retreat, but in the noise of everyday life, in the real world, where people juggle spreadsheets and toddlers, where decisions carry weight and responsibilities never pause. And so, the question arises, can mindfulness survive the modern world? Can presence walk with us through Zoom calls, kitchen spills, and investor briefings? The answer is not just yes, but especially yes. For it is precisely in these busy, human places that presence is most needed. And it begins not with ideal conditions, but with one breath. Let's begin with the knowledge worker, the one who lives by their mind. They craft ideas, write proposals, analyze data. Their intellect is their tool, and their calendar is often overflowing. Meet Daniel, a software engineer at a major tech firm. Smart, competent, always connected, but also secretly burned out. Daniel once described his day as a race between one urgency and the next. Meetings blurred together. Emails never stopped, even at night. His brain would simulate code, run future scenarios, chase unfinished loops. He tried productivity hacks, time blocks, caffeine. Nothing slowed the internal motor. Until one afternoon, during a leadership training, someone introduced the concept of mindful pauses. At first, Daniel scoffed. "I don't have time to pause," he thought, but the phrase lingered. That evening, during his usual inbox grind, he noticed his shoulders tense, his breath shallow. He remembered the idea and stopped. Just for 30 seconds. He inhaled deeply, exhaled slowly. No drama, just breath, and something shifted. It wasn't a grand awakening, but in that pause, Daniel felt space, a softness in the chest, a quiet behind the mind. He started inserting more of these pauses throughout the day before meetings, after emails, during difficult decisions. Over months, Daniel's entire approach changed. He still worked hard, but no longer from panic. He described it like this: the work didn't shrink, but my fear around it did. With mindfulness, Daniel became less reactive, more focused, more human. Then there's Maria, a full-time mother of 2. Her days begin before dawn and end long after the stars are out. There is no clocking out from parenting, no room for error, no applause, just constant tending to little bodies, big emotions, and everything in between. Maria discovered mindfulness not from a book, but from a moment of breakdown. One evening, after a long day of tantrums, spilled milk, and missed naps, she sat on the bathroom floor and cried. Her son knocked on the door, saying, "Mama, are you okay?" And something in her heart cracked, not from pain, but from realization: I am always doing, never being. That night, after the kids slept, Maria sat on the edge of her bed. She placed a hand on her chest. She breathed. She cried again, this time from release. She didn't use a timer or technique. She just allowed herself to be, without fixing, performing, proving. She made this her ritual. 5 minutes in the morning, 5 at night. Sometimes guided meditations, sometimes just silence. And she noticed a change, not in the chaos, but in her response to it. The yelling decreased, the laughter increased, the exhaustion remained, but it no longer swallowed her. She started teaching her children to breathe with her during tense moments. They would call it their dragon breath time. It became a family rhythm. Maria didn't become a perfect mom. She became a present one. Then there's James, a CEO of a fast-growing startup. On paper, he had it all: investors, influence, income. But inside, James felt something missing. Despite success, he battled imposter syndrome, chronic stress, and emotional isolation. His team admired him, but few really knew him. A coach introduced James to mindfulness not as a retreat, but as a leadership principle. "What if," she asked, "you led from presence rather than performance?" James was skeptical, but he experimented. He began meetings with a few moments of stillness. He started listening more than speaking. He paused before reacting. Over time, he noticed deeper trust forming with his team. conversations became real. Creativity surged. Turnover dropped. James realized his presence calm, steady, aware was more influential than any strategy. He stopped trying to prove himself. He started showing up fully. And in doing so, he created a culture where others could too. These stories, Daniel the engineer, Maria the mother, James the leader, are not anomalies. They are mirrors. Each represents a different form of modern life. Each found a way to bring mindfulness into the heart of responsibility. So what do they teach us? That presence is not reserved for monks. It belongs in offices, kitchens, and boardrooms. That mindfulness is not about doing less, but being more alive in what we do. That you don't need to change your life to change how you live it. Start with one pause. Before the next meeting. In the car, before walking into the house. As you wash your hands. As you open your computer. Return to the breath. Return to your body. Return to the moment. Not perfectly. Not for long. Just honestly. Just enough. Because in those moments, you remember, you are not your to-do list. You are not your mistakes. You are not the noise around you. You are here. You are breathing. And that is enough. On the outside, Eliza was a success story, founder and CEO of a rising tech company, featured in business magazines, invited to speak at conferences, applauded for her leadership. People admired her ability to do it all, run a company, raise 2 children, maintain a spotless image. But inside, Eliza was unraveling. It didn't happen all at once. At first, it was subtle, a shortness of breath during meetings, an irritability that lingered even after a disagreement, a sense of numbness that crept in during her daughter's school recital. She couldn't remember the last time she sat down without checking something, her phone, her schedule, her metrics. Even when she was home, her mind was on numbers, projections, deadlines. Her children would laugh, and she'd smile without hearing the joke. Her husband would reach for her hand at dinner, and she'd withdraw slightly, still caught in the last email she hadn't sent. Eliza knew something was wrong when, one afternoon, her assistant found her sitting in her office staring at a cup of cold coffee for nearly 10 minutes. When asked if she was okay, Eliza simply nodded. But the truth was, she didn't know anymore. Later that night, unable to sleep, she Googled how to stop feeling anxious all the time. Among the results was a podcast episode titled The Strawberry Moment. The title struck her. It sounded so simple, so innocent. She clicked play. The speaker told the story of the monk chased by tigers, the vine over the cliff, and the strawberry. Eliza listened in the dark as the tale unfolded. The monk, hanging between death and death, still found enough presence to taste the sweetness of life. She didn't cry, but she didn't forget the story either. In the days that followed, Eliza couldn't stop thinking about it. She wasn't being chased by literal tigers, but emotionally, it felt no different. The pressure to succeed, the fear of failing her team, her children, herself, the dread of disappointing investors. She was hanging on a cliff of her own, and she hadn't tasted anything real in years. So she made a quiet decision. Just one. Every day. For 5 minutes. She would sit without doing. Not meditating. Not optimizing. Just sitting. The first few days were torture. Her mind spun. Her fingers twitched to reach for her phone. The silence felt unbearable, but she stayed. 5 minutes. And something unexpected happened in that stillness. She began to feel again, not dramatically, but honestly. She noticed the tightness in her jaw, the ache in her chest, the exhaustion behind her eyes. She didn't judge it. She just let it be there. On the 7th day, something shifted. She was sitting on her balcony, early morning, when a breeze moved through the trees, brushing against her skin. The light fell gently across the floor, and the city, for a rare moment, felt quiet. And then it happened. She noticed the taste of her tea, not just the temperature or flavor, but the moment. She was there, not strategizing, not preparing, just tasting, just being. It was her strawberry. A moment so simple it should have gone unnoticed. But she noticed. That 5-minute ritual grew. Some days she journaled afterward. Other days, she simply breathed. Eventually, she began integrating moments of pause into her workday, closing her eyes before a board meeting, placing a hand on her chest during tense negotiations, walking slowly between tasks. Her team noticed. They couldn't quite name it, but something in her presence had changed. She was calmer, clearer, more grounded. Decisions came from wisdom, not urgency. She listened more, reacted less. The office felt different, less like a battlefield, more like a community. At home, her children noticed too. She began leaving her phone outside the bedroom. She started asking questions, then actually listening to the answers. One evening, her daughter crawled into her lap and said, "You feel softer now, Mommy." Eliza laughed and wept. The transformation wasn't about doing less. It was about doing everything with more awareness. She still ran her company, still managed stress, still had hard days. But now, she had to practice a way to return when the world pulled her away. And always, in her mind, was the strawberry. She even began to share the story with others at a retreat she was invited to. She told the tale during a talk. The room fell silent, and when she ended with, "I don't know how long I'm hanging from this cliff, but I do know how to taste a strawberry now," the audience gave no applause, only stillness. The story became a metaphor in her leadership team. They'd say, "This feels like a strawberry moment," when someone paused, laughed, or brought lightness to a heavy day. Eliza didn't change the world. She changed how she met it. And that changed everything. Her story is not unique because she's a CEO or because she struggled. Her story is powerful because it reminds us we all have strawberries. We just forget to taste them. We think awakening will arrive in some grand gesture, a mountain retreat, a thunderclap of clarity. But more often, it comes in a sip of tea, a breath in traffic, the weight of a child's hand in ours. Modern life is full of tigers, real and imagined, but in between them, always, is a moment, a choice, a presence. You don't need to quit your job or leave your life. You only need to pause long enough to notice what's already here. The breeze, the light, the tea, the breath, the strawberry. After the strawberry, what comes next? That fleeting moment of sweetness so vivid, so grounding has passed. The cliff remains. The tigers are still above and below. But something has shifted, not in the world, but in us. This is the invitation of mindfulness, not to escape life, but to live it more deeply. To touch not only the strawberries, but the roots, the ordinary, the often overlooked. Because mindfulness doesn't end with meditation cushions or stories told in quiet rooms. It begins there. Yes, but it continues in kitchens, on sidewalks, in boardrooms, in hospitals, in checkout lines. It unfolds in the heat of conflict, in the fog of fatigue, in the hum of everyday routines. It asks, can you be here? Even now, can you be present? Not just for beauty, but for boredom, for discomfort, for the ordinary rhythm of life. There's a story of a monk who once asked his master, "What is enlightenment?" The master replied, "Chop wood, carry water." The monk nodded. Then he asked, "What about after enlightenment?" The master smiled. Chop wood, carry water. The same actions, but with new awareness. This is everyday mindfulness, not a separate activity, but a new way of doing the same things. You still brush your teeth, but now you feel the bristles, the coolness of the water, the scent of mint. You still drive, but now you notice your grip on the wheel, the tension in your jaw, the way sunlight hits the road. You still answer emails, but now you pause before replying. You breathe. You ask, is this response necessary? Kind? True? These are small shifts, but they create a different life, not louder, but deeper. In this space, you begin to hear things you missed before, the sound of your own laughter, the softness in another's voice, the subtle way sadness appears in your chest, asking not to be solved, but to be seen. This is how strawberries become heart, because the more you taste presence, the more you feel everything: joy and grief, love and loss, restlessness and stillness. And you learn all of it belongs. Mindfulness becomes a kind of devotion, not to perfection, but to presence. You walk into a room, and instead of just entering, you arrive. You eat a meal, and instead of just fueling, you savor. You listen to someone speak, and instead of waiting to respond, you receive. Slowly, your life becomes less about outcomes and more about intimacy with the moment, with others, with yourself. And this intimacy is healing. It doesn't mean you'll never be overwhelmed again, or distracted, or angry, but it means you'll know the way back, the breath, the body, the now, and that changes everything. Take Maya, for example, a nurse working in a bustling urban hospital. Long shifts, emotional fatigue, constant urgency. For years, she ran on adrenaline and habit, until one day, a patient grabbed her hand and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." The words stopped her. Was I really seeing them? She wondered. She began a small practice. Before entering each room, she placed her hand over her heart. One breath in, one breath out. A reminder, be here. That simple act transformed her care. She didn't change her pace. She changed her presence. Or Jonah, a high school teacher who used to dread Monday mornings, always preparing, always behind. Then, he began starting each class with 60 seconds of silence. No agenda, just stillness. At first, the students were awkward, but over weeks, something softened. The room changed, and so did Jonah. I started teaching like I was breathing. He said, "Everyday mindfulness is not glamorous, but it is sacred. It asks, can you meet this moment as it is, without needing it to be different? Because here, in the dishes and traffic lights and toddler tantrums, is your real life, And presence doesn't wait for retreat. It begins with noticing a strawberry, a breath, a heartbeat, and in noticing, you return not to a better you, but to the true you, the one who was never far. Anxiety often arrives uninvited fast, loud, and overwhelming. Sometimes, it's a sudden rush of fear. Other times, a quiet hum beneath the surface. It may not shout, but it nags. What if something goes wrong? What if I'm not enough? In moments like these, the temptation is to escape scrolling, snacking, overthinking, or retreating. But what if instead of escaping, we turned toward it? What if anxiety was not a wall to run from, but a door to walk through? This is the heart of mindful transformation. It begins with a pause. The grounding practice? Here, now, gentle. This is a simple exercise, 3 words, 1 path. Step 1, here. The first step is to anchor in your body. Anxiety lives in the mind, but healing starts in the body. Sit or stand with both feet flat on the floor. Feel the contact with the earth beneath you. Place one hand on your chest, the other on your belly. Take a slow breath in through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Say silently to yourself, I am here. Feel the here-ness, the weight of your body, the sensation of breath, the fact that you are not in danger, only discomfort. Step 2. Now, bring awareness to the present moment, not the story about it, but the moment itself. What sounds are in the room? What colors are in your vision? What temperature is on your skin? Let yourself name it. Now I feel warmth. Now I hear a car outside. Now I feel tension in my shoulders. No judgment, just naming. This helps deactivate the survival brain. When we name the now, we step out of imagination and into presence. Step 3. Gentle. Anxiety often feeds on self-judgment. I shouldn't feel this. I'm overreacting. Why can't I handle this better? Replace that voice with gentleness. Whisper silently, this is hard, but I am doing my best. Place a hand over your heart. Imagine a friend saying, it's okay. You're safe now. Let that kindness soak into your nervous system like warm sunlight. Gentleness softens resistance. And what we stop resisting, we begin to heal. Optional. The 5 senses. Reset for deeper grounding. Use this sensory practice. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. This technique brings the mind out of the storm and back into the present body. It gives anxiety less room to grow. Remember, you don't need to make anxiety go away. You only need to stay. Stay kindly. Stay softly. Stay with yourself. Over time, your nervous system will begin to trust that it doesn't need to panic, that the present is not a threat, but a home. And eventually, that presence becomes your refuge, not just in calm, but in chaos too. The world often teaches us to run to move faster. Think ahead. Push forward. There's a quiet promise whispered in the background. Somewhere else is better. Someone else knows more. Someday will be safer. But mindfulness offers a different wisdom. This is it. This moment is your life. Don't run. Stay. It's not a denial of hardship. Life is difficult. There is grief, uncertainty, discomfort. But the heart of Buddhist philosophy doesn't ask us to avoid suffering. It teaches us to meet it with clarity and compassion. To not escape the present is not to freeze. It is to awaken. to say, even in this, I choose to be alive. Think of a candle burning in the dark. The flame flickers, not because the wind is stopped, but because it remains present with the wind, steady and soft. That is your awareness. That is what grows when you stop fleeing and begin facing. When we stop escaping the present, we begin to notice the moment is always enough, not perfect, but whole. It holds sorrow, yes, but also silence. It holds confusion, but also clarity. It holds discomfort, but also healing. And in this balance, we are invited to live with open eyes. The practice of staying present is not about making life easier. It's about becoming intimate with reality. No longer waiting for better to arrive. No longer needing every answer before we rest. The strawberry story, the breath during anxiety, the teacher's stillness in the classroom. All of these are reminders you don't need to escape your life to find peace. You only need to arrive fully into it the moment you stop resisting now. You find what you were searching for: spaciousness, quiet, truth. So the next time your mind says, run, hide, plan, fix, escape, try this instead. Stop, feel your feet. Take one conscious breath. Say softly, I am here. And in that sacred pause, let the truth arise. There is nothing wrong with this moment, except my absence from it. Presence is not a destination. It is a returning, again and again. Let this be your prayer. Let this be your way home. There was once an old farmer who lived in a quiet village, surrounded by mountains and wind. One day, his only horse ran away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbors came to console him. What bad luck, they said. The farmer simply replied, maybe. A week later, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 wild horses. The neighbors, amazed, exclaimed, how wonderful again. The farmer said, maybe. The next day, his son tried to ride one of the wild horses, was thrown off, and broke his leg. The neighbors came again. How terrible. And the farmer said once more, maybe. Soon after, soldiers came to the village to draft young men for war. They saw the farmer's son's broken leg and left him behind. How fortunate, the neighbor said. The farmer only whispered, maybe. This ancient parable, passed down in many cultures, holds a seed of wisdom far deeper than its simplicity suggests. At the heart of the story lies the quiet power of the word, maybe an openness that allows space between event and judgment, between experience and interpretation. We are quick to label. A loss becomes a tragedy. A gain becomes a triumph. A closed door becomes a failure. A new opportunity becomes a savior. Our minds grasp at certainty, trying to name what is good and what is bad as quickly as possible. But life rarely unfolds in straight lines. What seems devastating today may bloom into a gift tomorrow. What looks like a blessing now may unravel into hardship. The farmer's gift is not detachment, it is presence. He does not numb himself to pain or refuse to celebrate. Rather, he lives with a kind of sacred neutrality, a knowing that the truth of any moment is never final. That behind every bad and every good is the unknown mystery of becoming. This is the essence of the maybe mind. And in a world that craves certainty, where algorithms predict our preferences, and plans stretch years ahead, this maybe becomes an act of rebellion, not in resistance, but in surrender, a gentle courage that allows things to unfold, without needing to control the ending. Consider your own life. Can you recall a moment that once felt unbearable, yet later revealed a hidden gift? A heartbreak that led you to deeper love, a failure that redirected your path, a delay that saved you from harm. Maybe doesn't deny the pain, it simply doesn't freeze the story. It says, I don't know yet what this means. And that pause, that breath of openness, can be the difference between suffering and serenity. It's a practice. When something difficult arises, a job loss, a health scare, an argument, notice your mind's first reaction. Then breathe and whisper gently, maybe this too belongs. Maybe this is part of something I cannot see yet. You are not forced to pretend it's good. You are only invited not to label it too soon. There is great peace in that space. This philosophy is deeply rooted in Buddhist teaching, not as a passive acceptance, but as a mindful awareness that everything is changing, that the labels we apply are temporary, fluid, shaped by emotion and time. Even joy, when clung to, becomes suffering. Even pain, when held lightly, transforms. The farmer's calm is not apathy, it is spaciousness. And in your own life, this spaciousness can open at any moment, in the pause before reaction, in the silence before judgment, in the softening of your grip on how things should be. That is the invitation of maybe, not to abandon responsibility, but to meet life with curiosity rather than conclusion. So the next time something unexpected happens, good or bad, let the story of the farmer return to you. Let it echo in your chest like a bell. And let the word maybe be your prayer, not as indecision, but as freedom. There was once an old farmer who lived in a quiet village, surrounded by mountains and wind. One day, his only horse ran away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbors came to console him. What bad luck. They said. The farmer simply replied, maybe. A week later, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 wild horses. The neighbors, amazed, exclaimed, how wonderful again. The farmer said, maybe. The next day, his son tried to ride one of the wild horses, was thrown off, and broke his leg. The neighbors came again. How terrible. And the farmer said once more, maybe. Soon after, soldiers came to the village to draft young men for war. They saw the farmer's son's broken leg and left him behind. How fortunate, the neighbors said. The farmer only whispered, maybe. This ancient parable, passed down in many cultures, holds a seed of wisdom far deeper than its simplicity suggests. At the heart of the story lies the quiet power of the word, maybe an openness that allows space between event and judgment, between experience and interpretation. We are quick to label. A loss becomes a tragedy. A gain becomes a triumph. A closed door becomes a failure. A new opportunity becomes a savior. Our minds grasp at certainty, trying to name what is good and what is bad as quickly as possible. But life rarely unfolds in straight lines. What seems devastating today may bloom into a gift tomorrow. What looks like a blessing now may unravel into hardship. The farmer's gift is not detachment, it is presence. He does not numb himself to pain or refuse to celebrate. Rather, he lives with a kind of sacred neutrality, a knowing that the truth of any moment is never final, that behind every bad and every good is the unknown mystery of becoming. This is the essence of the maybe mind. And in a world that craves certainty, where algorithms predict our preferences, and plans stretch years ahead, this maybe becomes an act of rebellion, not in resistance, but in surrender. A gentle courage that allows things to unfold without needing to control the ending. Consider your own life. Can you recall a moment that once felt unbearable, yet later revealed a hidden gift, a heartbreak that led you to deeper love, a failure that redirected your path, a delay that saved you from harm? Maybe doesn't deny the pain. It simply doesn't freeze the story. It says, I don't know yet what this means. And that pause, that breath of openness, can be the difference between suffering and serenity. It's a practice. When something difficult arises, a job loss, a health scare, an argument, notice your mind's first reaction. Then breathe and whisper gently, maybe this too belongs. Maybe this is part of something I cannot see yet. You are not forced to pretend it's good. You're only invited not to label it too soon. There is great peace in that space. This philosophy is deeply rooted in Buddhist teaching, not as a passive acceptance, but as a mindful awareness that everything is changing, that the labels we apply are temporary, fluid, shaped by emotion and time. Even joy, when clung to, becomes suffering. Even pain, when held lightly, transforms. The farmer's calm is not apathy, it is spaciousness. And in your own life, this spaciousness can open at any moment. In the pause before reaction, in the silence before judgment, in the softening of your grip on how things should be. That is the invitation of maybe, not to abandon responsibility, but to meet life with curiosity rather than conclusion. So the next time something unexpected happens, good or bad, let the story of the farmer return to you. Let it echo in your chest like a bell, and let the word maybe be your prayer, not as indecision, but as freedom. There is a river that never stops moving. It carries leaves and light and silence. Sometimes it runs wild, loud, swollen with rain. Other times, it moves gently, almost still, but it never pauses. That river is your life, and its name is impermanence. Nothing we hold stays the same. The breath you're taking now, it leaves before you can cling to it. The thought you just had, it's already faded into memory. The child you held in your arms yesterday is no longer the same today. The version of yourself from last year, gone, like morning mist. And yet, we resist this. We want to hold, to freeze, to preserve. We take photos, write plans, build legacies, not because these are wrong, but because we're afraid to let life slip through our fingers, like water, afraid to admit that nothing, truly nothing, is permanent. But the teachings of impermanence in Buddhism do not come to create fear. They come to free us. They remind us that because everything changes, we can begin again, that grief doesn't last forever, that pain has an end, that joy, too, cannot be hoarded and therefore must be savored. Imagine a world where nothing changed, no seasons, no growth, no forgiveness, no new chances. It is change itself that creates possibility. When we resist impermanence, we suffer, but when we bow to it, we come home. This is where the faith in enough begins, because if things are always changing, then what we grasp today might not be there tomorrow. And so we ask, How do I know I'm okay? How do I live without constant craving? The answer is not to chase more, but to embrace enough. Enough is not about scarcity. It's not resignation. It's a deep, radical presence that says, this moment is sufficient. This breath is complete. I don't need to become more to be whole. When we are trapped in the belief of not enough, life becomes a competition, a climb with no peak, a hunger with no satisfaction. We seek more money, more love, more validation, not because we are greedy, but because we are scared that without more, we'll vanish. But the truth is simpler. You already are. You already belong. And if you allow this moment to be enough, you'll discover something extraordinary peace that doesn't depend on outcome. This is not theory. It's practice. Take Ethan, a young architect who was always rushing to build his career, rushing to be known, rushing to arrive. One day, during a routine medical checkup, he was diagnosed with a rare illness. His plans collapsed, his timelines shattered. At first, he spiraled into despair, but as his days slowed, something opened. He began to walk more slowly, listen more deeply, appreciate more fully. I used to think peace came after achievement, he said. Now I know it comes from accepting that this moment, even in its brokenness, is enough. Or take Amina, a woman who lost her husband suddenly. The grief was unbearable. But within that sorrow, she noticed something. Her friends came closer. Her children hugged longer. Meals were cooked with more care. She began to say, I love you more often. Not because life was secure, but because it wasn't. Impermanence made her love more fiercely. It also made her trust more gently. That is the paradox when we accept that everything ends. We stop waiting to begin. We stop waiting for the perfect job, the perfect relationship, the perfect version of ourselves. We begin to live now, and now becomes enough. This trust in enough is not passive. It is a courageous stance. In a world that thrives on urgency, it says, I will not abandon the moment I'm in. It chooses presence over perfection. It invites gratitude over grasping. It opens the heart to what is, instead of mourning what isn't. There is a Zen saying, when you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. And when you do feel lack, because you will return to the breath, feel it enter and leave, without force, without demand. Notice it is enough. Then look around you, the light on the wall, the softness of your shirt, the sound of your own pulse. None of it is permanent, but all of it is here. And for now, that is more than enough. Life rarely shakes us with earthquakes. More often, it's the smaller tremors that unsettle us, the careless comment, the unexpected email, the impatient tone of a loved one. These moments arrive quietly, yet leave ripples across the heart. We don't always notice how quickly our mind leaps to protect, defend, or retaliate. It's automatic. We react, often without awareness, but somewhere between the thing that happens and our response to it, there's a space, a breath, a pause, and in that pause lives the entire possibility of freedom. A man walks into a room, his mind already burdened by worry. Someone forgets to greet him, and instantly, the reaction arises. They're ignoring me. The body tightens. The story begins. In another moment, a child spills juice on the table. A parent already stressed, raises their voice, not because of the spill, but because the reaction was ready, waiting to erupt. It's not the events that cause suffering, it's the reflexes we've practiced. But imagine if, instead, we paused. The man notices the silence, but instead of building a story, he takes a breath and wonders, maybe they're just distracted. The parent, seeing the spilled juice, feels the heat rise but chooses to breathe before speaking, allowing softness to surface. This is not about suppressing emotion. It's about making space for it, feeling it, not feeding it, naming it, not becoming it. Mindful living is not passive. It is deeply engaged. It invites us to show up fully, not in defense, but in presence, to meet life, not with rehearsed scripts, but with awake attention, to notice when we're being pulled into old patterns and to step back just enough to choose differently. It begins with awareness. The moment something touches you, whether joy or frustration, pause. Feel the body, the breath, the tightness, or the openness. You don't need to label it. Just feel it. The body always speaks the truth before the mind interprets it. Then, soften the gaze inward. Ask yourself, gently, is this reaction true? Is it helpful? Is it necessary? And sometimes, the honest answer is yes. Sometimes, anger is needed. But more often, it is a wave we mistake for a signal. Let it pass, and from that calmer shore, you'll see more clearly. There's a small practice I return to daily. When I feel something rising annoyance, judgment, defensiveness, I place my hand on my chest. No one needs to see. I simply remind myself, this is a moment, not a life sentence. That simple touch, that breath, creates the smallest crack in the armor. And through that crack, kindness slips in. The beauty of responding rather than reacting is that it transforms conflict into connection. It invites curiosity in place of accusation. It creates room for both you and the other person to be human, imperfect, whole. I once met a teacher who said, "Every reaction is a chance to practice forgiveness before the wound." That phrase never left me. Because when we pause, we're not just preventing harm, we're offering healing, not just to others, to ourselves. Think of all the moments you've reacted and later regretted it. The words spoken too fast, the messages sent too sharply, the energy wasted replaying it in your mind. Now, imagine a version of you that pauses, that breathes, that responds with intention. Imagine how much lighter your days would feel. This doesn't mean perfection. You will still react. So will I. But each time we catch it, each time we choose a softer way, we carve a new path in the mind. And over time, that path becomes more familiar than the old one. You begin to recognize the early signs, the tightening, the rush, the story forming, and you choose to step back, just long enough to see it for what it is, a pattern, not a truth. And so you breathe. You come back to your body. You come back to this moment. And you respond not from fear, not from habit, but from presence. This is how we live more mindfully, not in grand gestures, but in the small, brave pauses, in the moments when no one else sees. But everything changes within. It is the art of living with awareness, of loving with spaciousness, of meeting the world, not with resistance, but with readiness to feel, to learn, to offer your full presence. Not perfectly, but honestly. And again, and again. Nathan had always done everything right. He studied hard, made his parents proud, got into a prestigious university, and even landed a spot in a competitive international business competition. He believed life was linear, that effort equaled results, and that success was a simple equation of discipline and determination. At 24, he stood on the cusp of what he thought was his future. His team had developed a brilliant startup concept. They had weeks of market research, perfect slides, financial models, confident pitches. They flew to Singapore for the finals. Nathan was sure they would win, but they didn't. Not only did they lose, they failed spectacularly. Mid-presentation, their prototype froze. The judges raised pointed concerns they hadn't considered. One panelist even questioned their entire premise. Nathan's voice cracked, trying to defend their vision. When they walked off stage, it was in silence. That evening, his team blamed one another. Fingers pointed, friendships strained. By midnight, Nathan sat alone in his hotel room, staring at the city lights, numb. It wasn't just disappointment he felt. It was shame, humiliation, collapse. He called his mentor the next morning, an older man, quiet, slow-spoken, who once told Nathan that the best wisdom is found in failure, not success. Nathan had always dismissed that as poetic. Now, it rang differently. His mentor listened patiently, then asked just one question. What if this isn't failure? What if it's a door? Nathan didn't understand. A door to what to yourself? The man said. That conversation lingered. Back in his home city, Nathan took time off. Instead of rushing into the next opportunity, he wandered. He sat in parks, went on walks, journaled. He reread his notes from the competition. Not to fix, but to reflect. He began to see they had missed basic empathy. Their product was clever, but disconnected. They had built from ego, not from listening. More importantly, he noticed how his self-worth had been tied to achievement. Losing had felt like losing himself, but was he really lost? He remembered something his mentor said later. Success gives you trophies, but failure gives you mirrors. And slowly, Nathan began to look. He saw how tightly he had clung to control, how afraid he was of being wrong, how little space he had left for humility. This looking wasn't comfortable, but it was clarifying. He started to meditate, not for hours, but 5 minutes a day. Sitting, breathing, observing the mind's noise. He noticed his impulse to judge himself, to replay the loss, to grasp at the next goal. Instead of resisting, he watched. In that space, he found something unexpected, not weakness, but softness, not despair, but silence. A kind of quiet, knowing I don't need to be perfect. I only need to be present. Months passed. Nathan reconnected with one teammate, the only one who hadn't blamed anyone. They began meeting weekly, this time not to build, but to listen. To each other, to communities, to ideas without agenda. What emerged wasn't another startup. It was something simpler, a project to help young people navigate failure with honesty, not fear. A space for reflection, sharing, and silence. He named it Begin Again. It started as a blog, then a circle of 10 people. Then, slowly, it grew. Nathan didn't become famous. He didn't return to the world stage. But he became real. He no longer feared failing, because he had learned within every collapse is a clearing, within every ending, a beginning, and within himself, a steady, quiet voice saying this, too, is the path. There was once a family that held a modest savings in the bank, a small safety net for the future. They were not rich, but they were comfortable. Then came the stock market crash. Their investments lost value overnight. Their sense of stability shook. Fear crept in. How will we pay for college, they asked. What if another crash comes? What if we lose everything? These are modern tigers in financial form, unpredictable, potentially dangerous, and capable of stealing our peace. Many react by pulling all investments, driving deeper into cash-only mentalities. Others throw more money in the game, chasing recovery like futurists trying to predict fate. But a mindful approach is different. Instead of reacting with panic or greed, we pause, we assess. We ask, what are our needs? What is enough? What can we control? What can we let go? A family named Tran chose to sit with their fear. They practiced looking at their numbers with honesty. They asked, do we have enough to live? Yes. Enough to nourish our children? Yes. Is this loss permanent? No. They didn't close their accounts in fear, nor did they suddenly gamble it all in hopes of redemption. They chose balance. They slowed down. They worked to adjust their plans so that even if markets dipped again, their basic life didn't. They learned that money is not a fortress, it's water. It flows. It serves best when handled with awareness, not grasping. The restart was not dramatic, but internal. They felt rooted. They didn't get richer overnight, but their fear grew smaller. The same fragility can appear in family life. Consider Lynn, a young mother with two belongings, a newborn and a 4-year-old. One evening, her husband came home late. He was silent, worried, overworked. Lynn sensed tension. She yanked questions. He shut down. Conflict ignited. Before, Lynn's instinct would have been to escalate, demand explanations, raise voice, push for clarity, but she had begun a practice of mindful pause. Instead, she took a slow breath. She placed a hand on her belly. She waited. "Are you okay?" she whispered, without accusation. Her husband exhaled. He began to share the pressure at work, the exhaustion, the guilt at being less present with the kids. He needed time, and instead of reacting, Lynn responded with presence. They sat together, silently, holding space. No one fixing, just listening. That evening wasn't dramatic. They still had challenges, but the ground between them shifted from defensiveness to connection. A few weeks later, Lynn felt sick. A rough cough grew into persistent fatigue. A diagnosis followed an autoimmune condition. Not life-threatening, but chronic. She could have reacted with outrage. Why me? Why now? But she remembered impermanence. She remembered maybe and enough. She stumbled into fear, but then paused. Her husband offered support. Their children asked if she was all right. And in that shared care, they discovered something deeper than health presence. Lynn didn't get cured overnight, but in the awareness of her condition, She found self-care, intentional rest, nourishing meals, quiet mornings, breathing slowly with gratitude. Her illness became a teacher, not a prison. It taught her to value small satisfactions, the warmth of sunlight, the taste of tea, the laughter of her children. It taught the family to live with deeper attunement, checking in gently, celebrating small victories, holding space without panic. And these are not stories of extraordinary courage, but of ordinary hearts meeting challenge with eyes open. They teach us that whether in finance, family, or health, the real work is internal. It's not in fixing the outside, it's in cultivating presence inside. To look at a portfolio and ask, is this enough? Not, why isn't it more? To sit across from your partner and choose connection over complaint. To hold your own suffering as if it were a friend in need. And this kind of mindfulness isn't a quick fix. It doesn't promise insulation from pain, but it offers something deeper resilience born of surrender. When you see life's changing tides as part of its beauty, not as a sign of failure, you find peace. When you stop believing you need to conquer everything, you allow room for healing. When you notice each moment of tension and choose to breathe instead of explode, you plant seeds of transformation. Maybe your finances will recover. Maybe they will not. Maybe health will return. Maybe not. Maybe relationships will flourish. Maybe not. But in all of it, presence is always possible, and presence is enough. These real-life moments reflect the Dharma in action. In finance, the storm tested priorities and awakened trust that enough can be enough. In relationships, tension became a door to deeper presence. In health, unwellness revealed the preciousness of breath, care, connection. That is the gift of mindfulness. Not an escape from challenge, but an invitation to meet it, to breathe with it, to learn from it, to remember, you are not your fear. You are the awareness shining through it. There is a teaching in Zen that says, before good and bad, there is only what is. It sounds simple, but to truly live it, especially when things go wrong, requires a radical shift in perception. It asks us to sit not on the side of judgment, but in the heart of presence. A monk once asked his teacher, "Master, how do I see clearly?" The master answered, "Stop calling it good or bad, then you will see." This is the essence of meditative clarity, not to become cold or passive, but to return to the center where things simply are. Sit in meditation. Notice a thought arise. That was a stupid thing I said. Immediately, a judgment. And that judgment leads to shame, which leads to tension, which leads to another loop of overthinking. Now sit again. The same thought arises. That was a thing I said. No label, just the event. Not good, not bad, just true. The difference is subtle, but powerful. In one, the mind is trapped. In the other, it is free. Meditation teaches us to witness reality before our stories about it. A sound is just a sound. A pain is just a sensation. A silence is just space. Only when the mind wraps it in meaning do we begin to suffer. That's not to say meaning is wrong, but to be free. We must first learn to see clearly, and clarity begins with neutrality in daily life. This practice is revolutionary. Your colleague misses a deadline. Immediately, your mind says they're irresponsible. They don't care. But can you pause and see? There was a missed deadline. That's all I know so far. Your partner is quiet at dinner. The mind says they're upset. I did something wrong. But can you breathe and witness? They are quiet. I feel uncertain. That's all that is true for now. This is not detachment. It is intimacy with reality. Neutrality does not mean we stop caring. It means we stop distorting. In silence, we begin to see that most events are not problems. They are happenings. The problem arises in our labeling, our clinging, our aversion. The bird sings, beautiful maybe, or just a sound. The cup falls, tragic maybe, or just broken. The job ends, disaster, maybe, or simply transition. To see clearly is not to flatten life. It is to meet it with eyes unclouded. From that clarity, compassion arises not from fear or fixing, but from knowing. In my own practice, I've watched my breath for hours, days, years. Sometimes it's smooth, sometimes it's jagged, sometimes it feels trapped in my chest, but always, it passes, it changes, like every moment, like every emotion. The gift of meditation is this: the longer you sit with something, the more you see its changing nature, and the more you see its changing nature, the less you need to control it. A strong emotion arises: anger, grief, jealousy. Sit with it. Don't name it wrong. Don't chase it away. Just breathe. Just feel. Let it move through. And in that movement, you'll find the truth. This, too, is just a wave. When we stop reacting, we start relating. We see not a bad day, but a day with clouds. Not a failure, but an outcome. Not I'm worthless, but I am feeling pain. And with that seeing comes freedom. Not because we fix the world, but because we no longer get lost in it. So the next time you sit in meditation, or pause in your day, ask gently, what am I adding to this moment? And what happens if I let that go? Then breathe, then feel, then simply be, and see what reveals itself. When we speak of maybe, it's not simply a word. It becomes a way of life, a gentle reminder that every outcome is a possibility, not a conclusion. I'd like to share the story of 3 people, ordinary souls who, in the seemingly small moments of their days, learn to live with maybe. There is a teacher named Asha who, for years, planned her students' futures with unwavering confidence. She chose curriculum, set expectations, created assessments, all designed to shape bright children. But one day, a student failed her class, not due to lack of effort, but because they were struggling with unseen challenges at home. Asha felt as though she had failed. Her world of structured plans collapsed into guilt and doubt. That evening, after school, she sat by the window sipping tea. A breeze swept through. She remembered maybe this is not failure. Maybe it is an invitation to listen rather than teach. For the first time in years, she paused lesson plans and schedules. She learned to ask the student gently, "What do you need?" This openness didn't solve the academic failure instantly, but it opened a space for connection, a human heart being seen. Over seasons, Asha learned to live with curiosity amidst disappointment. She found that maybe could coax questions out of certainty. Maybe this child is creative in ways I don't yet understand. Maybe my own grief is clouding my lesson plans. She became a teacher who valued presence over perfection, and in that presence, the classroom began to breathe. Then there is Marcus, a middle-aged father whose company suddenly laid off half his team, including him. He felt his identity fracture: provider, contributor, professional, all gone. His wife and children looked to him with worry as he shuffled through job portals and interviews in a blur of anxiety. One morning, his daughter hugged him and said, "Daddy, can you come to my game?" His first instinct was to apologize. "I'm sorry. I'm useless." But then maybe whispered in his heart, "Maybe today, I can just be here. Maybe being present is my job right now." He went to the game, cheered loudly, sat in the stands, sweaty and happy, and for a moment, his loss fell away. In that grandstand seat, he learned that loss doesn't vanish with replacement. It transforms. Maybe helped him see that his worth wasn't tied to titles. Maybe jumping into grass stains and tailgating in the parking lot was also being a father. Over months, with maybe as a guide, he found a new path, not better, but real. Finally, there is May, a city dweller with chronic migraines. Her days were built around avoiding triggers: screen time, certain lights, even laughter. Plans shifted, friends canceled, joy dimmed. One evening, a group of old friends gathered for dinner. Her head throbbed, but she wanted to go and suffer. Her mind warned, but maybe emerged. Maybe this pain is part of the night I share with friends. She went. The laughter was loud. Bright lights flickered overhead. She felt a twinge, then relief. She didn't feel okay, but she felt alive. Sharing bread, telling jokes. Her head hurt. Yes, but so did her heart in a good way. She didn't cure her brain, but she reconnected with living, and maybe stayed with her. Maybe every moment is worth risking. Maybe pain doesn't mean paralysis. These stories show how maybe becomes a practice, a lens that softens certainty and opens the heart. We don't have to win a startup competition. Please, good students, or recover from loss perfectly. We only need to lean into maybe when our story demands resolution. Maybe we're not meant to know outcomes. Maybe the messy middle is exactly where freedom lives. Maybe we fail. Maybe we rise. Maybe we simply breathe. And in that breathing, the world opens. You can practice maybe today. Notice a moment of tension, a fear, a longing, a need for closure. Then whisper, maybe this is enough. Maybe this will change. Maybe it won't. But I don't need to hold that unknown as a problem. Maybe is an invitation to live lighter, to softly place your hand on your heart when fear rises, to trust that the story can wait, to open your age-old fingers and let uncertainty slip through. And in that, letting go, you stand steadier. Because when everything is shifting, the ability to stay present is the deepest resistance. Maybe isn't giving up. It's lighting a candle in the dark. It's placing your feet on the path without knowing what lies ahead. It's offering compassion to the part of you that wants security over life. To live with maybe is to love the unknown, to brave the uncharted, to trust that life needs uncertainty to grow. We arrive now at a quiet turning point. After walking with maybe through stories of failure, loss, transformation, we begin to see something more subtle, more intimate, that what determines our peace is not what happens around us, but how we feel it inside. Every situation we've explored, whether financial collapse, family strain, or illness, was accompanied by a companion emotion: fear when the money ran dry, grief when the relationship shifted, shame when expectations weren't met. And under all these emotions, a question trembles gently. How do I hold this feeling without letting it consume me? This is where we begin to see the true practice of inner mastery, not the ability to control life, but to respond wisely to the waves of emotion that rise within it. When you live long enough with maybe, you begin to witness a strange miracle. Your reactions grow slower, softer. You no longer rush to label an emotion as a problem. Instead, you let it be. You breathe with sadness. You sit beside anxiety. You make space for joy without gripping it too tightly. And slowly, you realize emotions are not enemies. They are messages. They arrive not to destroy, but to reveal. Anger points to a boundary crossed. Fear warns of something tender inside. Joy signals alignment. Even numbness is a voice, whispering that you've reached your limit, that you need rest. But to hear these voices, we must stop fighting them. We must pause, breathe, and look not with judgment, but with gentle curiosity. This is where the next path opens the sacred art of emotional regulation, not as a technique to manage or suppress emotions, but as a way of living in harmony with the full spectrum of your humanity. Because there will always be pain. There will always be change. There will always be a moment when someone says something sharp, or when the heart trembles with insecurity. And in those moments, you will either react or respond. Reaction comes fast, from old wounds, from ego, from fear. Response comes slowly, from breath, from presence, from awareness. To respond is not to pretend you're not feeling. It's to feel completely, but not collapse. It's to cry without drowning. It's to feel anger without harming. It's to hold grief without forgetting beauty. This is the training. This is the way. And in the chapters ahead, we will walk deeper into this realm. We'll meet the stories that show us how anger dissolves in compassion, how insult bounces off the calm presence of a Buddha, how tenderness can arise even in the face of disrespect, how we can honor our emotions without obeying them blindly. So take this breath, now, as a doorway. Take this moment as a threshold. You've seen the maybe. Now, you will explore the how to be still when provoked, how to see clearly when your mind is clouded, how to choose peace not because you've escaped emotion, but because you've befriended it. This is not the end of a lesson. It is the beginning of a deeper one. The heart grows not by avoiding difficulty, but by learning how to remain open within it. And so, gently, we step into the next chapter. Emotions as teachers, stillness as strength, presence as power. Let us begin. When we think of someone causing us offense, whether through harsh words, unfair criticism, or disrespect, our minds tighten. We brace ourselves. We react. We prepare defenses, arguments, counter blame. But in the gentle shadow of the Buddha's life, we find a mirror held not up in silence, but in compassion. On a quiet morning, the Buddha was visiting a village. He walked with his disciples by a quiet lane when a man, filled with anger, stood in their path. This man, known for his fierce temper, shouted insults at the Buddha, accusing him of being deceptive, lazy, worthless. The words came hard, like stones flung without mercy. Yet the Buddha did not flinch. He looked at the man with the same stillness, the same open gaze, as if he were looking at a childhood friend. The disciples bristled, ready for protection or retaliation. Instead, the Buddha turned to them and said softly, "If you offer me a gift and I do not accept it, whose possession is it? Yours." "Lord," they replied. He continued, "When someone offers kindness and I accept it, that kindness becomes mine. If someone offers insult and I refuse to take it, to whom does it remain? It remained with the man who spoke it, with those words." The Buddha didn't just teach mindfulness, he embodied it. He invited us to pause in the middle of a fence and ask, "Do I choose to pick up this arrow or leave it on the ground when a fence strikes?" The reactive mind seizes it like a lifeline. It says, "This defines me. I must correct it. I must answer it." And so we carry insult as if it were a crown, heavy, sharp, persistent. But what if we could release that burden in another story? A queen known for her beauty and grace felt slighted by villagers who praised another woman. She wielded her influence and convinced her husband to punish them. When the Buddha learned of this, he intervened not with condemnation of the queen, but with a single verse. If someone's words or criticisms disturb you, it is your choice to feel the suffering. Let it not disturb me. The queen, moved not by guilt, but by reflection, recognized something within herself. She had chosen suffering in response to insult. She realized that the power to suffer lies not in the offense itself, but in the mind that welcomes it. And so she released it. The Buddha's example speaks not of saintly perfection, but of practical freedom. He didn't deny the appearance of offense. He simply refused its invitation to intrude. In modern life, we rarely encounter angry villagers, but we do face email tones that sting, criticism in meetings that wounds, scorn from friends that cuts deeper than we expect. And we carry the same question. Will I collect this arrow or let it fall? Let me share a moment from my own life. I once facilitated a retreat. On the second day, one participant approached me during lunch. Her face was tense. She said, "Your talk this morning? I felt judged. I felt put on the spot. I expected compassion, but instead I felt exposed. I felt a thread of shame pulled tight, but before I could respond, I remembered the Buddha's question, 'Is this my arrow?' I paused. I breathed. I asked, 'Do I accept her pain as mine?' I chose to listen. 'Thank you,' I said quietly. 'I'm sorry you felt that. That was not my intent. Can we speak about what specifically felt?' Exposing her eyes softened. She named it when you said, 'If we don't pause, we lose ourselves.' I felt like a failure. She thought she'd failed the group. We talked for a few minutes. I apologized for not holding space more clearly. She thanked me. She stayed in retreat, transformed it into a moment that shaped her presence. What if I had reacted defensively? What if I had answered her motivation? What if I'd said, "Well, that's just how mindfulness is"? The moment would have hardened. The arrow could have struck. But in holding mine, the arrow stayed where it belonged. This doesn't mean the Buddha never experienced pain. We know from scriptures he often grieved, questioned, felt the weight of love, loss, fear, but he practiced non-identification. He felt, but he didn't fuse. His awareness held both the voice that insulted and the breath that responded. He showed that when life hits you with a harsh word, you don't have to hit back with words, with pain, with self-judgment. You can offer calm. You can offer silence. You can offer understanding, even when nothing is deserved. In examining this aspect of freedom, we also glimpse the shape of compassion, not as weakness, but as clarity. To hold space for someone's pain, whether they feel unloved, frustrated, envious, is to offer them a gift they often don't know they need. The Buddha's compassion did not excuse cruelty. He did not condone the insult. He just refused to make it an identity. He refused to carry it as his cross. Practically, we can bring this to life in moments of tension. Pause, breathe, feel the impulse to defend. Choose to let go. Not because you're right, but because you'd rather be free. You can still apologize. You can still correct, but from clarity, not from reaction. You honor your feeling, and you also honor your presence. As we deepen this practice, we begin to see the rhythm of emotional sovereignty. It arises not by building a wall, but by refining the space within it, making it elastic. We feel, we breathe, we walk through the world remembering we are both wave and ocean. Offense becomes a surface ripple, not a core collapse, and in that transformation, we begin to embody freedom not as escape, but as encounter. Let's close this reflection with the Buddha's final meditation on offense. Written in a teaching rarely preserved but deeply transformative, do not hold the arrows of anger or insult. They pierce only the one who holds them. Long ago, in a small mountain village, lived a humble craftsman named Tenzin. He was known for his delicate wooden carvings, ornaments of birds in flight, bowls that appeared almost floating, small tokens of kindness and beauty. Tenzin made gifts not for praise, but from a quiet, simple love, the swirl of his chisel, the grain of the wood, the breath that entered and left his body as he worked. One season, a traveler arrived from a distant city. She was wealthy, refined, accustomed to the trappings of high culture. Hearing of Tenzin's skill, she asked him to carve something unique. Hence, he began a basket of entwined branches, roses in bloom, petals unfurling toward the light. He worked for days, inhaling cedar and pine, his hands shaping each petal and leaf. When the piece was complete, he carried it across the mountains to the traveler's home. He presented it with a bowed head, heart open, voice soft. "This is a gift from my hands to your journey." The traveler received it, but then set it aside, too busy with her affairs to notice its form. Days passed. Weeks passed. She forgot it altogether, until one evening, the work was broken cracked during her frequent moves. She gave it away as a discarded relic, and it was soon lost in time. When Tenzin learned of its fate, he sat quietly. Pain whispered through his chest a question. Did my gesture not matter? He might have reacted anger, resentment, sorrow. He might have expected the traveler to regret or apologize, but he did not. He paused. He inhaled and exhaled. Maybe. He thought this gift was never for her. It was always for this moment. And in that space, he found peace. He realized the gift had served its purpose at the moment of creation and of giving. The receiving was beyond his doing, beyond his heart. The gift witnessed the intertwining of his skill and his intention. That was enough. In your own life, you will give gifts of many kinds: time, love, attention, work, apology, kindness. Sometimes they are received with gratitude, honored, held carefully. Other times, they are brushed past, neglected, or broken. In those moments, your heart may ache, but that ache is not your enemy. It is the gentleness you carry. It is proof that you still care. And so the practice arises not from perfection, but from presence with your own heart. You walk with the ache, tenderly. You feel it, but you do not feed it. You breathe with the ache, and you trust that sometimes the gift only needed to be given. Just like Tenzin's carving it did not seek approval, it sought expression. There is another layer to this. When we offer something with full sincerity, whether time, resource, love, there is a vulnerability in the very giving. We open a door within ourselves and invite someone else to step through it. We may wish for walk-through, but the door can remain closed. Yet, in that vulnerability, we find our healing not in crossing the threshold, but in standing ready to receive or let go. This is the kind of freedom the Buddha pointed to, not freedom from giving, but freedom in giving, to offer your best and release the outcome, to plant the seed and trust whether it grows or not, to speak a word and rest if it lands or falls, to open your heart and remain open, even if it is not returned. The traveler's forgetting is not a failure. It is the unfolding of impermanence. What she carried before, she carried for a season. What she leaves behind cannot bind Tenzin's heart. The carving breaks another dancer, leaving the floor. And still, Tenzin stands steady. Again, he asks, was the gift useless? And again, he whispers, maybe not. Maybe the gift drenched his own soul in beauty. Maybe it reminded him of the sacred act of creation. Maybe it held the breath of the mountain in its lines. That is enough. When you feel your gifts go unused or unseen, pause, feel the ripple in your chest, breathe into it, offer your own kindness back to yourself. I gave from my best place. That is enough. Hold the posture of offering, then release, not as defeat, nor as self-deprecation, but as freedom. In this freedom, you become like the bhikshu who offered water at a roadside but didn't wait to be thanked, the wrist that passed a flower but didn't expect return, the smile that gladdened a few feet of sidewalk but didn't demand a reply. These small actions become our monument, not for ego, but for love, not for reward, but for presence. They are the silent offerings of an awakened heart. May you be free in your giving. May you release what is not yours to carry. May your heart be spacious enough to offer with abandon and light enough to walk on. For inside that space is a quiet spring that never dries. That is the gift. We often hear that reacting is our default, and non-reactivity awaits only the enlightened. But the path isn't reserved for sages. It unfolds in small moments. The question we face is not, am I enlightened, but am I awake? Right now, let me offer a story of two sisters, Mai and Lin. In their childhood, disagreements were frequent. Mai was fiery. Lin remained quiet. As adults, the dynamic continued. One evening, during a family dinner, Mai made a pointed joke at Lin's expense. Lin felt heat rise in her chest, hurt, indignation, old karma resurfacing. She could have lashed out. Instead, she paused. A memory surfaced sitting with her grandmother, breathing through grief, a gentle hand on her shoulder. She remembered her breath. She simply took one slow inhale and on exhale, said calmly, "That felt sharp for me." No accusation, just presence. Mai bristled at first, but she also noticed Lin's calm. The sisters talked it through quietly, tenderly. The night ended with hugs, not resentments. This is not supernatural self-control. It's recognition, a bridge already built within us through past practice, because none of us start here. Non-reactivity grows from small returns, a breath before a word, a pause before a posture, space before a response. Yes, it is hard because we're ideologically trained to solve problems fast. We live in a world of instant feedback. In an argument, instinct pushes us to win, but emotional intelligence asks us to wait to sit with the nuance until the tide turns. But yes, it is also easier than we think because a single breath rewires everything. In the pause, the amygdala settles. Prefrontal clarity returns. We discover we're not hostage to thoughts. We remember we can choose again. We are a wide train. Fold 1, Ray. Recognize your reaction patterns. Maybe you snap at criticism. Maybe you instantly withdraw. These are old neural trails. Notice them not to shame, but to map. Awareness is the first pivot point. 2. Practice tiny returns. A deep breath before reading email. A moment of stillness before standing up. A conscious exhale when crossing a threshold. These micro-practices train you to return even when life accelerates. 3. Befriend the discomfort and pause. Waiting is not weakness. It is soil. The discomfort of saying nothing after an insult is where clarity finds root. Holding still is often the greatest movement. Take a modern example. A manager, Alex, receives angry feedback from a team member accusing him of favoritism. In the old pattern, Alex might respond defensively. He could argue, justify, push back. Instead, he pauses, turns to his breath. He says, "I hear your frustration. I want to understand." He sets a follow-up meeting. In the quiet that ensued, trust began to rebuild. Was it easy? Not at first. It cost humility. It delayed his defense. It required patience. But was it worth it? Yes. The moment was transformed. Connection replaced conflict. So is non-reactivity hard or easy? It is hard if you expect perfection. It is simple if you accept humanity. The deep story here: Each pause tells the nervous system, I am safe here. Each return home is a vote for presence, not for pattern. Over time, the internal microstructure shifts. What once took a ferocious effort becomes graceful posture. Patience blossoms in quiet moments. Presence becomes a way of being, not a performance. But what about when we're overwhelmed? Yes, sometimes reactivity wins. We snap, we burn, we retreat. That is not failure. That is evidence of humanity. The practice, then, is not perfection. It's return. If you reacted, catch yourself. Breathe. Apologize if needed. Soften the imprint. Let the memory become learning, not shame. The end. Non-reactivity is not a destination. It is a path lit by breath, moment by moment. Pause, feel, return, listen, choose. In each step, we sow freedom. Reflection moment for you. Think of the last time you reacted you wished you hadn't. Can you relive just one breath? Next time someone irritates you, can you pause just one beat? Notice even a small pause is a seed. With time, that seed grows into spaciousness, and spaciousness becomes your home. So to return to the question, is non-reactivity hard or easy? It is hard at first, then surprisingly simple. When we remember ourselves, when we trust the pause, when we choose presence, even if only for a moment, it is not a mountain to climb. It is a door to ope. We imagine anger as a wild, stormy force, something unpredictable and chaotic. But when we bring mindful attention closer, we discover that anger often wears a familiar mask, the ego's wounded armor, old beliefs about ourselves, and long-held hurts we haven't yet healed. There was once a monk named Aaron who, through many seasons, cultivated calm. One autumn, his monastery welcomed a teacher known for his austerity. One evening, the visiting teacher made a joke harsh, pointing at Aaron's gentle nature, and the hall filled with laughter. Aaron forced a smile, yet inside, a sharp heat rose. That night, Aaron couldn't sleep. His chest felt tight. He replayed the scene, the echoing laughter, the pinch of embarrassment. The face of the visiting monk turned in his mind like a wound opening. His teacher noticed the unrest in Arun's gaze. Before dawn, she led him to a garden. The air was cold, mist lifting off the earth. "Show me your anger," she said gently. Aaron closed his eyes. He saw the humor as judgment, judgment as rejection, rejection as a confirmation that he wasn't enough. His reaction wasn't about the joke. It was about what the joke echoed. He'd carried a childhood belief. If I'm not perfect, I'm unlovable. That night, the visiting teacher's joke had brushed against that old, festering fear, and like a match on dry kindling, anger flared. In that garden, under the rising sun, Aaron saw it. His anger wasn't spontaneous. It was seated in a story he'd been carrying unnoticed. He named it softly. "I am scared. I am scared of not being enough." The anger softened, the tightness released beneath the heat. He found an ache, the same ache he carried as a child wanting approval. That moment became transformative. Aaron's teacher handed him a small stone. Anger is the fire. The stone is your witness. When the fire burns, place your hand on it. Breathe. and let both simply be. Aaron practiced. Whenever irritation arose, he felt the heat, felt the story, felt the flame. Then he placed his awareness, his inner stone, gently upon it, not to extinguish the fire, but to hold it with presence. Because anger, when met with presence, reveals its truth, not that we're broken, but that we are still human. In daily life, we carry similar stories, the silent ones. The belief that I must always be right masks a fear of being small. The thought I deserve respect hides wounds of neglect from our youth. The expectation people should treat me well hides memories of being unseen. When these beliefs are challenged by criticism, by silence, by injustice, anger often erupts, not because of the outer event itself, but because the inner wound is being pressed. Consider the story of a father, Min, whose teenage son snapped back at him during dinner. Min's chest tightened. His voice rose. "Respect your elders" echoed from childhood. Instantly, Min reacted not at the words, but at the hurt he felt inside. Later, breathing by the river, Min realized his anger was not at his son, but at his own inner child, who once felt devalued whenever he spoke up. At that revelation, Min's posture shifted. He could still address the disrespect, but from compassion, from understanding that his son's defiance held echoes of Min's shadow. The anger became a doorway to connection, rather than a wall of conflict. So what helps us see anger's roots? 1. Pause and feel the fire. Notice the heat, tightness, trembling. These are the body's alarm bells. Don't hurry past them. 2. Ask softly, what belief is being threatened? What story is being told inside me? Let the answers rise without judgment. 3. Find your inner witness, a quiet space, a breath, a phrase. This is anger. This is pain. This is me caring. 4. Hold. Don't react. Place your attention gently on the felt sense. The fire grows smaller when met with presence. 5. Listen beneath the heat. What is your wound asking? I want safety. I want respect. I want love. These are the heart's truths. Over time, this becomes a dance of awareness. You feel the old story. You breathe with the story. You offer kindness to both the story and the person in front of you. You respond from presence, not from flame. It doesn't make anger vanish. It makes anger visible. And when anger is visible, it becomes beautiful, like a river reflecting autumn leaves, rather than a raging torrent. It becomes compassion in motion. May you meet your fire with breath. May you listen to the story underneath. May your presence be the witness that transforms. For anger is not the enemy. It can be the messenger. And when we learn to hold the messenger, we discover our own freedom within the flame. Imagine encountering your anger as if it were a newborn, untamed, fragile, and in need of simple presence. In this practice, you don't fight the fire, you sit beside it, like a parent cradling a crying infant, not to silence the cry, but to offer warmth and connection. Begin by finding a quiet place where you can sit without interruption. Allow your posture to be soft, neither rigid nor slouched, simply upright enough to hold wakefulness. Close your eyes or let them rest softly on the floor. Let the breath slow on its own. Follow its natural rhythm. like a wave gently coming and going. Your body is the first embrace you offer, safe, steady, whole. Bring to mind a recent moment when anger stirred inside you, perhaps the sting of a harsh word, the frustration over something unfair, or a moment you felt unseen. Don't replay the story or look for blame. Just rest in the felt sense of that moment, as if noticing a scent or a color in the corner of awareness. Trust that your body will guide you to the core of that feeling. You may feel heat in your chest, tension in your throat, a tightness in your belly, or even tears gathering behind your eyes. Let each sensation speak as a tender voice calling for attention. Don't judge these sensations, they are not good or bad. They simply exist here and now, and you are here with them. As the feeling rises, gently settle your attention on the breath once more. Inhale, I am here with you. Exhale, I am not afraid. Let the breath be the lullaby that reassures the inner child and the inner fire that you will stay. You are not trying to fix the anger or push it away. You are simply refusing to abandon it. Feel the flame as it flickers and pulses. It may be small, or it may feel like a bonfire. Either way, allow it to unfold at its own pace. Notice the quality of the energy. Is it sharp, buzzing, heavy, or trembling? See if you can liken it to an infant's cry, not because it needs your fixing, but because it seeks your presence. This is not weakness. This is courage. As you sit in stillness, you may sense the instinct to flee, to judge the anger as wrong, or to suppress it quickly. But instead, breathe in again and offer a silent acknowledgement. I am here. You are not enabling anger, you are offering tenderness to your inner child while staying true to your adult strength. That simple presence begins to dissolve the edge. If tears come, let them flow. If your body trembles, allow that too. These expressions are not signs of failure. They are markers of healing. In this moment, anger is not an enemy, but a messenger telling you something, perhaps that a boundary was crossed, a memory stirred, or a need went unmet. Let it speak, and listen without planning a response. After a few minutes, however long feels right, bring one hand gently to your heart. Feel its warmth. Offer an inner vow to yourself. May this anger find peace. May I learn from you. May all beings at peace. Let the vow resonate softly in your being. Sit a moment longer, tasting the quiet clarity that emerges when fire meets acceptance. When the practice concludes, open your eyes slowly. Bring your awareness back to your surroundings. Walk lightly. Notice how the world looks when the fire in your chest has been met and not suppressed. There is a stillness now, as if the part of you that once raged has softened, not gone, but transformed. This practice does not make you impervious to anger. It does not erase injustice or wrongdoing. What it offers is much more valuable: the ability to meet your own fire with open hands, to respond instead of react, and to grow in self-kindness. When anger arises in your day, you can return to this presence, whether for 30 seconds or 3 minutes. You don't need a cushion or a bell, just your breath, your willingness, and the simplest of invitations: I am here. Over time, this tender self-awareness becomes a sanctuary. When anger comes, you'll remember it not as a threat, but as a beckoning to come home to a heart that is awake, caring, and free. Once there was an entrepreneur named Emily, known for her sharp mind and unwavering dedication. She had built her startup from the ground up, pouring countless hours into every decision, every product, every pitch. Emily was proud, but beneath that pride was a sensitive core, a heart that craved respect and recognition. One day, during a critical board meeting, one of her investors dismissed her proposal with a sharp tone and cutting words. "This plan is naive," he said. "It won't work in the real world." The room fell silent. Emily felt a sudden rush of heat rise from her chest to her face. Her mind raced with rebuttals, but before she could speak, a wave of anger and hurt washed over her. She wanted to defend herself fiercely, to prove him wrong, to protect her vision and her worth. But something inside paused, a small stillness, like a deep breath held at the brink of a storm. Emily remembered a practice she had learned recently to meet anger, not with reaction, but with presence. She allowed herself to feel the heat, the sting of the words, the sense of being undervalued. But instead of immediately responding, she breathed slowly, softening the tightness in her chest. In that moment of presence, Emily realized that the investor's words were not truly about her. They were a reflection of his fears, biases, and limits. She could choose to carry his judgment as a wound or see it as an opinion. Nothing more. When it was her turn to speak, Emily responded calmly, acknowledging the concerns but inviting collaboration. "I appreciate your perspective. Let's explore how we might address these challenges together." Her tone was steady, her presence unshaken. The meeting shifted. A dialogue opened. The tension eased. Afterwards, Emily sat quietly, reflecting. She recognized that being offended was inevitable in leadership, but being controlled by offense was optional. Her ability to pause and respond from clarity was not weakness, but strength. She realized that beneath her anger lay vulnerability, a fear of rejection, of failure, of losing control. By embracing this vulnerability with kindness, she could transform her reaction into growth. Emily's journey was not about suppressing emotions, but befriending them. When offense came, she no longer ran or fought. She stayed, breathed, and met it with compassion. This shift changed not only how she led, but how she lived more open, more resilient, more free. There was a woman named Lynn who carried her anger like a heavy cloak. She grew up in a household where voices rose like storms, and silence was scarce. Every time someone was wronged or hurt, anger was the language used to express pain. Lynn learned to armor herself with fury, believing strength meant not showing softness. As an adult, Lynn's anger flared often at work, in traffic, with friends. It felt justified, necessary, but beneath it, a deeper ache simmered, a loneliness she didn't want to face. One day, after a particularly intense argument with a colleague, Lynn retreated to a quiet park, sitting on a worn bench. She closed her eyes and tried a new practice she had heard about to breathe into anger, to meet it without judgment, and to seek what it wanted to tell her. At first, the fire raged. She felt the familiar heat, the urge to lash out. But slowly, as she kept breathing, a different voice whispered beneath the noise, a voice of pain, of unmet needs, of old wounds. Lynn saw that her anger was a protector, shielding a frightened child inside. She saw how her beliefs about justice, respect, and safety had shaped her reactions. And most importantly, she saw that beneath the armor, there was a tender heart longing for connection. This realization did not dissolve anger immediately, but it softened its edge. Lynn began to practice compassion, not just for others, but for herself. She learned to greet anger as a visitor rather than an enemy, to listen with kindness rather than fight. With time, this gentle presence transformed the way she related to herself and to the world. Her anger became less a battle cry and more a signal light guiding her to deeper understanding. Through this journey, Lynn discovered that compassion is not weakness, but courage. It is the strength to hold one's own pain and the pain of others without breaking. This is the path of mind shift from reaction to response, from fury to understanding, from separation to connection. There comes a moment in every journey where the weight of holding on becomes too much. We clutch tightly to ideas, to pain, to grudges, to hopes believing that our grasp will protect us, secure us, define us. But in truth, the tighter we hold, the more we bind ourselves. Letting go is not loss. It is liberation. The Buddha spoke of the river that flows constantly. If you try to hold the water in your hands, it slips away. But if you open your hands and let it run through, you feel the coolness, the life, the endless dance. To let go is to open your hands. Acceptance is the heart of letting go. It is not surrender in weakness, but a strength that acknowledges reality as it is not as we wish it to be. When anger fades into compassion, when pain softens into peace, there is space for acceptance. It is the place where healing begins. Imagine a cup of tea spilled on a table. The moment it falls, you have two choices: curse the spill, or clean it gently and move on. Holding anger or regret over the spill only stains your heart. Acceptance allows you to wash the surface clean, but acceptance does not mean forgetting or giving up. It means embracing the impermanence of all things, the good and the bad, the joy and the sorrow. In that embrace, you find freedom. Freedom from chains forged by resistance. Freedom from storms brewed by clinging. The path of letting go is not easy. It requires courage to face what we fear most: emptiness, loss, change. Yet it is the only path to true peace. When you let go, you open to life's flow, the rising and falling, the coming and going. You open to yourself, and in that opening, you discover that you are not your attachments. You are not your pain. You are the vast sky, holding all weather. The letting go is a return home, to the silence beneath noise, to the stillness beneath movement, to the heart beneath all things. As you walk this path, carry this thought gently. I release what no longer serves me. I welcome what is. And in this release, you will find the true meaning of freedom, peace born not from control, but from surrender. There was once an old potter named May who crafted bowls so delicate they seemed woven from air itself. In her village, people cherished her bowls, not just for their beauty, but for the way they held tea, as if they carried warmth from the heart of the earth. One day, a young apprentice asked May, "Master, how do you create such perfect bowls?" May smiled and lifted a bowl, tracing its cracks with a gentle finger. "This bowl is broken," she said softly, "and yet it is still whole." The apprentice frowned. But the cracks, doesn't that mean it is ruined? May shook her head. No. The cracks tell a story. They remind us that nothing lasts forever. The bowl is fragile, but that fragility makes it precious. We drink from it fully because we know it will not always hold. The story of the broken bowl is an invitation, a call to live fully, embracing impermanence rather than fearing it, to savor every sip, knowing the bowl will one day shatter. In life, we are like May's bowl, our moments, relationships, bodies. They are beautiful precisely because they are impermanent. Yet how often do we live as if everything is unbreakable? We plan, hoard, cling afraid of loss, afraid of change. The Buddha taught that this clinging is the root of suffering, like grasping at water. The tighter we hold, the more we suffer when it slips away. May's bowl invites us to remember loss is certain, but loss is not our enemy. Loss is the teacher. Before the bowl breaks, it is already fragile. Before a loved one leaves, they are already transient. Before health fades, it is already changing. The question is, will we live fully before the break? Will we drink deeply, even knowing the bowl will crack? Or will we wait, holding back, trying to protect what is already slipping? There is a moment in every loss when the world shifts, the moment when grief meets clarity. When May's apprentice saw the cracks, she only saw damage. But May saw history, beauty, a call to presence. This shift is at the heart of letting go, not in denial of pain, but in embracing life's fragile pulse. And to live fully is to lean into uncertainty, to cherish what we have not as possession, but as gift, to love not as ownership, but as presence, to be like the bowl aware of fragility, and therefore infinitely precious. Imagine holding a cup of tea in your hands. Feel its warmth, taste its sweetness. Know it is temporary, and in that knowing, drink with gratitude. This is the way of Chiek Chen Jumvo, the way of living before loss. If you accept this invitation, your days become less about guarding and more about opening. Your relationships deepen, your moments breathe, your heart softens, because you walk not in fear, but in awe. Loss is not merely a personal event. It is an essential part of the cosmic law. From the moment we are born, we are placed within the ever-flowing river of impermanence. Everything changes. Nothing remains forever. There's a story about a tiny mustard seed. This little seed grows from the earth, stretching through the damp soil towards the gentle sunlight. It believes it will remain forever green, forever vibrant. But time waits for no one. And wind, rain, and frost arrive. The mustard seed begins to wither. Its leaves gradually yellow and fall away. The seed experiences loss not only of its youth and vitality, but of what it once was. It must let go of its freshness to become part of a greater cycle decomposition and rebirth. In our own lives, we're much the same. Every loss, every change, no matter how small or vast, opens a door to a deeper understanding of the nature of life. Personal suffering, separation, illness, death are milestones through which we glimpse the larger picture. The universe moves according to the law of impermanence. ceaseless transformation. Every season changes its leaves. Every river shifts its course. Every star dies and is reborn in the darkness. Personal loss is but a small reflection in this grand tapestry, and realizing this helps us not to be trapped in isolated pain. From this perspective, suffering is no longer something to reject or avoid, but an integral part of the living journey. It is a reminder to cherish each moment, each breath, each existence. In meditation, when we sit in stillness and observe the flow of thoughts and feelings, we learn not to react to change, but to welcome it with compassion. We realize that loss is not an enemy, but a wise teacher guiding the way. By accepting and deeply understanding this cosmic law, we heal wounds within our hearts, lessen fear of death and separation, and open ourselves to love more fully. Loss teaches us to let go gently, so we are no longer bound by the past or anxious about the future. It helps us live fully in the present, because the present is the only place where true peace can be found. There is an ancient teaching in Buddhism known as the two arrows parable that beautifully illustrates the nature of suffering. The first arrow is the unavoidable pain we experience the injury, the loss, the hardship that life brings. The second arrow is the suffering we add on top of that pain, the reaction, the judgment, the resistance that we impose on our experience. Imagine a man walking through a forest. Suddenly, an arrow pierces his leg. The pain is sharp and immediate. This is the first arrow, life's inevitable suffering. But instead of just sitting with the pain, the man draws a second arrow from his quiver and shoots it into his own leg. This second arrow represents our mental and emotional reaction to the pain, the anger, the self-blame, the fear that compounds our suffering. Most of us are struck not just by the first arrow, but by the second one, over and over again. The Buddha taught that while the first arrow is often beyond our control, the second arrow is something we can learn to avoid through mindfulness and wise understanding. Take, for example, the story of a woman named Hannah. Hannah lost her job unexpectedly. The initial pain, the first arrow, was a deep blow to her sense of security and identity. She felt scared and uncertain. But soon, Hannah began to add the second arrow. She told herself, "I'm a failure. I'll never find another job. I'm worthless." These thoughts magnified her suffering, making recovery harder. Through her practice of mindfulness, Hannah began to notice when the second arrow arose. She learned to observe these reactive thoughts without attaching to them. She realized that while she could not stop the pain of losing her job, she could choose not to shoot herself with the second arrow of self-condemnation. This shift brought Hannah relief. The pain remained, but the added suffering lessened. She was able to take practical steps towards rebuilding her life without being trapped in despair. The two arrows teach us a profound truth. Suffering is often not caused by what happens to us, but by how we respond to what happens when or judge our pain, we suffer more. The path is to cultivate awareness that allows us to feel the first arrow fully without denial or repression, and to gently release the second arrow. in daily life. This means when disappointment, loss, or hurt arises, we acknowledge it kindly, without immediately spiraling into blame or regret. We learn to hold our pain with compassion, allowing it space to breathe. This practice does not eliminate pain, but it transforms suffering. We become like the man in the forest who, after being struck by the first arrow, chooses not to harm himself further. Instead, he tends to his wound, cleanses it, and walks forward with gentleness. There once was a woman named Kisa Gotami who lived in a small village. She was known for her love and devotion, especially towards her only child, a son she cherished deeply. Their bond was unbreakable, and she poured all her heart and soul into caring for him. One day, tragedy struck. Her beloved son fell ill and passed away. Overwhelmed by grief, Kisa Gotami refused to accept his death, clinging to hope. She carried his small body from house to house, begging for a medicine to bring him back to life. The villagers were kind but helpless. No one could provide a cure for death. Finally, someone advised her to seek the Buddha, who was known for his wisdom and compassion. When Kisa Gotami approached the Buddha, she pleaded for a medicine that could restore her son. The Buddha looked at her with deep compassion and said, "Go and find a mustard seed from a household where no one has died." Hope flickered in her heart, and she set out on this impossible task. She visited many homes, but every family she met had experienced loss. No mustard seed could be found from a place untouched by death. In that moment, Kisa Gotami's heart began to open. She realized that death is a universal experience, no one escapes it. Her grief, once isolating, connected her to all beings who suffer loss. Returning to the Buddha, she bowed deeply. He gently spoke, "Death is part of the cycle of life. To accept this truth is to begin the path of liberation." Through this story, we learn that acceptance of impermanence of life and death is the gateway to healing. Kisa Gotami's journey shows us that clinging to what is lost only prolongs suffering, while opening the heart to reality allows compassion to arise. Her sorrow transformed into wisdom. Her pain became a path. In our lives, when faced with loss, whether of loved ones, dreams, or moments, we are invited to walk this path, to see that suffering connects us, not isolates us, to embrace impermanence with courage. The Buddhist teachings remind us that acceptance is not defeat. It is freedom, freedom to live fully, love deeply, and open our hearts to all that life brings. Impermanence is the heartbeat of life, from the rising and setting of the sun to the shifting of seasons. Everything moves, changes, and fades. Nothing in our existence is fixed or permanent, not our bodies, our relationships, our feelings, or our circumstances. Yet, most of us live as if permanence is real. We build our identities around people, possessions, and stories, hoping to find security in the illusion of stability. This creates a silent tension, a fear beneath our smiles, because the world is always changing. The Buddha taught that understanding impermanence is key to liberation. When we truly see that all things arise and pass away, we loosen our grip on what cannot last. This loosening is not detachment, but freedom. Freedom to engage fully without fear. Freedom to love without clinging. Imagine a river flowing continuously. We can stand on the bank and watch it go by, or we can try to hold on to a single drop. Trying to hold it only causes pain. Watching it flow invites peace. Living peacefully with impermanence means embracing the flow, allowing joys and sorrows to arise and pass without grasping or resisting. It means cultivating presence, accepting what is here now, and releasing what is gone. This doesn't mean indifference. On the contrary, it deepens our appreciation. Knowing that a flower blooms only briefly makes its beauty more precious. Knowing that a loved one may not be here tomorrow makes every moment with them sacred. In practice, this means turning toward life with open hands, ready to receive and to let go. It means being present to the fragile beauty of now. One teacher shared that when she felt overwhelmed by change, she would hold a single leaf and meditate on its impermanence, how it had once been part of a bud, how it would soon wither and return to the earth. This meditation brought calm. It reminded her that all her worries were part of the same cycle. Impermanence teaches us humility. Our plans, fears, and desires are part of a vast dance we cannot control. But it also teaches us courage, because we choose how to move within the dance. When we embrace impermanence, we no longer resist life's flow. Instead, we become like the ocean, vast, deep, and flexible, holding all waves with grace. This is the path to peace, not through control, but through surrender, through seeing clearly that nothing lasts. We free ourselves from clinging and open to the fullness of living. In the quiet moments of our daily life, we are often unaware of the broken teacups all around us. These are the small, subtle reminders that nothing is permanent, that fragility is woven into the fabric of existence. Recognizing these moments is an invitation to awaken to live more deeply, more fully, and with more compassion. Imagine sitting with a warm cup of tea. The tea is fragrant and soothing, the cup delicate. Suddenly, the cup slips from your fingers and shatters on the floor. The sound echoes sharply, a sudden crack in the calm. In that moment, you have a choice. You can gasp and mourn the loss, or you can pause and breathe, acknowledging the fragility of what you held. You might even feel gratitude for the warmth and the flavor, however brief. In life, broken teacups come in many forms: a harsh word, a missed opportunity, an illness, a relationship that changes. They are often the moments when our sense of security fractures, and we are called to face impermanence. To practice recognizing these moments, begin with mindfulness, attuning to the present with openness and curiosity. Notice when discomfort arises. It might be irritation at a delayed train, sadness over a forgotten call, or anxiety about the future. These sensations are the cracks in your cup. Instead of pushing them away, lean gently into them. Breathe into the discomfort. Allow yourself to feel without judgment. This is the practice of holding your broken teacups with kindness. As you cultivate this awareness, you may find that your relationship with loss and change softens. The sharp edges dull. You learn to meet difficulty, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. A friend once shared that when she lost her job unexpectedly. Her first reaction was panic and despair. But with time and practice, she began to see this loss as a broken cup, a moment that invited her to slow down, to reconsider her path, to connect more deeply with what mattered. She started daily reflections, noticing small, broken cups each day, disagreements, disappointments, fears, and met them with gentle attention. This practice helped her build resilience and compassion for herself and others. Recognizing broken teacups is not about becoming detached or indifferent. It is about deepening connection to the moment. However fragile, it is about embracing life's impermanence and finding peace within it. Each broken cup is a doorway to greater presence, to greater wisdom, to greater love. The Buddhist teachings remind us that loss is universal. No one escapes the experience of losing something precious, whether it is a loved one, health, youth, or even moments of peace. This truth, while often hard to face, is the foundation of a life lived with wisdom. Imagine a river flowing steadily toward the sea. Along its path, it encounters stones, fallen branches, changes in terrain. It may slow, swirl, or pause, but it continues moving. The river does not resist the obstacles. It flows around, over, through. Similarly, our lives are currents in the great flow of impermanence. Loss is one of the stones the river meets. It is not a barrier, but a part of the journey. The Buddha taught that clinging to what is lost only deepens suffering. Instead, he invited his followers to recognize loss as an opportunity to awaken to the preciousness of the present, to live with intention, to cultivate compassion. This teaching is not about detachment from life's joys. It is about embracing life fully, with awareness that all things are temporary. The story of Kisa Gautami teaches this well. Her grief opened her heart not just to her son's passing, but to the shared human condition. In that opening, she found liberation. To live worthily in the face of inevitable loss means to carry gratitude for what we have, courage for what we face, and kindness toward ourselves and others. It means to wake each day with the intention to love deeply, to act wisely, and to be present. When we remember that everyone loses, we no longer fear loss alone. We join a vast community of beings traveling the same path. This shared reality becomes a source of strength, a reminder that life's fragility is the soil for compassion and meaning. As we come to the close of this chapter on letting go, acceptance, and living deeply, it is important to pause and breathe in the fullness of what we have explored. Life is a dance of coming and going, of holding tight and releasing. Each moment carries the echoes of impermanence, and in recognizing this, we find a profound freedom. The stories we have shared, the broken bowl, the mustard seed, the two arrows invite us to meet life as it is fragile, unpredictable, and beautiful. They remind us that suffering arises not just from what happens to us, but from how we relate to it. In practicing presence, mindfulness, and compassion, we create space for healing. We learn that to live deeply is not to avoid pain, but to embrace it with an open heart. It is to honor loss as a passage, not an end. As you move forward, remember that this path is gradual. It does not demand perfection or swift mastery. It asks only for kindness to yourself and others, and the courage to be present. Let your days be marked by moments of awareness. When the broken teacup appears, greet it with a gentle breath. When anger rises, sit beside it like a child, offering care rather than judgment. When grief arrives, let it soften your heart without overwhelming it. In these simple acts, you live the teaching, you live the truth that everyone loses, and you live with the grace of knowing that, in loss, there is also love. Thank you for walking this journey here. May your path be gentle, your heart open, and your presence steady. In today's journey, we have walked together through profound stories of suffering, impermanence, and living fully in each moment. We've met the image of the broken cup, the fading mustard seed, and learned that life is a continuous dance of change. Yet within this ever-shifting flow, there is a vast stillness, a deep peace waiting quietly for us to discover. When was the last time you truly paused, breathed fully, and touched the present moment without rushing or resisting? Perhaps that very moment will be your anchor amid life's storms, amid loss and pain. We learn the gentle art of letting go, not to forget, but to love more deeply and freely. Let these stories become your companions, helping you when emotions rise and the mind unsettles. Remember, each of us holds the power to transform from within through presence, compassion, and acceptance. This path is never easy, but it is filled with light and hope. If these reflections have touched your heart, please like to share this positive energy with others. Leave a comment with your thoughts and feelings so we can learn and grow together. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next videos, where we continue to explore deep lessons in meditation and Buddhist wisdom. Thank you for walking this path with me today. I look forward to seeing you again on the next journey, where peace will always be our final destination.